Your mind is built for average, but you're capable of becoming unbreakable, and I'll show you exactly how. In the next 3 hours, you'll discover the proven system that transforms ordinary thinkers into unstoppable achievers, using the same methods as Navy SEALs and Olympic champions. The Unbreakable Mind. Audiobook. Introduction. Your mind is not as strong as you think. Right now, as you read these words, countless micro-stressors are already chipping away at your mental fortress. The endless notifications, looming deadlines, relationship tensions, and financial pressures that define modern life. You feel it, don't you? That subtle undercurrent of anxiety, that nagging sense that you're always one crisis away from breaking point. You're not alone. In an era where mental resilience has never been more crucial, we've never been more fragile. Studies show that 76% of professionals experience burnout, while anxiety and stress-related disorders continue to surge worldwide. The uncomfortable truth? Most of us are operating with mental architecture built for a simpler time, leaving us dangerously unprepared for today's challenges. But here's the game-changing reality. Mental strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you engineer. Just as elite athletes build physical strength through systematic training, you can forge an unbreakable mind through proven neurological principles and strategic practice. This isn't about positive thinking or pushing through pain. The Forge methodology, focus, ownership, resilience, growth, excellence, draws from cutting-edge neuroscience and battle-tested strategies used by Navy SEALs, Olympic champions, and high-performing executives. It's a precise blueprint for transforming your mental architecture from fragile to formidable. The choice is yours. Continue operating with mental architecture that wasn't designed for today's demands, or build the unbreakable mind you need to thrive in this new world. Chapter 1. The Mental Strength Revolution. Your heart pounds against your chest. Sweat forms on your palms as you grip the presentation remote. The boardroom feels impossibly large, 20 pairs of eyes fixed on you. Executives, investors, decision-makers who hold your future in their hands. This is your moment, the presentation you've spent months preparing for. But as you open your mouth to speak, something terrifying happens. Your mind goes completely blank. The carefully rehearsed opening lines evaporate. That confident persona you've built crumbles. Panic rises in your throat like bile. In this crucial moment, when everything is on the line, your mind, your most vital tool, has betrayed you. You know this feeling. Maybe it wasn't a high-stakes presentation. Perhaps it was during a job interview, an important conversation with your partner, or while pursuing a goal that meant everything to you. That moment when your mental strength falters precisely when you need it most. But what if I told you this mental collapse isn't inevitable? What if you could build such unshakable mental fortitude that these moments of panic become as foreign to you as they are to elite performers? This isn't wishful thinking. It's a scientific reality that will transform your life. The breakthrough discovery revolutionizing our understanding of mental strength is this. Your brain's response to pressure isn't fixed. Just as you can train your body to run marathons or lift heavy weights, you can systematically train your mind to perform under any circumstances. The latest neuroscience research has shattered the myth that mental toughness is something you're either born with or without. Take one of the most legendary displays of mental mastery in sports history. Michael Jordan's flu game during Game 5 of the 1997 NBA Finals. The night before this crucial playoff game, Jordan was struck with a severe case of food poisoning. Team doctors advised him not to play. He could barely stand up straight during warm-ups, his body racked with fever and dehydration. Yet what happened next defied medical science and human limitations. Jordan not only played, he dominated. For 44 minutes, he fought through extreme physical distress to score 38 points, including the game-winning three-pointer. The Bulls won 90-88, taking a critical 3-2 series lead. But here's what most people miss about this story. Jordan's performance wasn't just about pushing through pain. It demonstrated something far more profound about the human mind's capabilities. In post-game interviews, Jordan revealed he used specific mental techniques to separate his consciousness from his body's distress signals. He didn't just ignore the pain, he systematically redirected his brain's processing of it. This reveals the first crucial truth about mental strength. Your mind's response to challenges isn't automatic or predetermined. It's trainable. Jordan hadn't just gotten lucky that night. He'd spent years developing the mental tools that allowed him to perform under extreme conditions. Our traditional understanding of willpower and mental toughness is fundamentally flawed. We've been taught that mental strength is about gritting your teeth and pushing through, a battle of force versus resistance. This outdated model explains why so many people fail to maintain high performance under pressure. They're using the mental equivalent of trying to break down a wall by running into it repeatedly. The new paradigm of mental training is based on systematic skill development, not brute force. Think of it like learning to play an instrument. You don't become a concert pianist by sitting down and attempting to play Beethoven's Fifth Symphony through sheer willpower. You build foundational skills, practice specific techniques, and gradually increase complexity until virtuoso performance becomes natural. This same methodical approach applies to developing mental strength. Through specific exercises and techniques, you can literally rewire your brain's response to pressure, fear, and uncertainty. Neuroscience shows that every time you practice these methods, you strengthen neural pathways that support peak performance while weakening those that trigger panic and doubt. Take Alex, a brilliant software developer who nearly abandoned his entrepreneurial dreams because of debilitating self-doubt. Every time he approached potential investors or tried to pitch his innovative security software, his mind would flood with worst-case scenarios. He'd stutter, lose his train of thought, and leave meetings feeling defeated. But Alex discovered these mental patterns weren't his destiny. He began applying systematic mental training techniques, starting small. First, he practiced controlling his physiological response to stress through specific breathing patterns. Then he developed mental triggers that could instantly activate his peak performance state. He created visualization routines that pre-wired his brain for success in high-pressure situations. Within 6 months, Alex had transformed. During his next investor pitch, when that familiar wave of panic began to rise, he deployed his mental tools automatically. His presentation flowed naturally. He handled tough questions with calm confidence. That meeting secured his startup's first round of funding. The key insight from Alex's transformation wasn't that he eliminated fear or uncertainty. It's that he developed reliable tools to perform powerfully despite those feelings. This is the essence of true mental strength. It's not about becoming fearless. It's about building systems that ensure you perform at your best regardless of circumstances. You're now at the beginning of your own transformation journey. The first step is identifying where mental weakness currently holds you back. Think about the recurring situations in your life where your mind betrays you. Is it during public speaking? In conflict situations? When pursuing ambitious goals? When facing uncertainty? Your patterns of mental collapse aren't random. They're specific and predictable. By identifying these patterns, you begin to take control of them. Throughout this book, you'll develop the exact tools needed to transform these moments of weakness into opportunities for displaying unshakable mental strength. But this isn't just about personal achievement. As you develop these capabilities, you become a force that lifts others. Your mental strength creates a field of confidence that influences everyone around you. Just as Jordan's transcendent performance inspired millions, your journey to mental mastery will impact far more lives than just your own. Chapter 2. The Power of Mental Ownership. Your life is exactly where your mental habits have led it. Every decision, every reaction, every moment of procrastination or action has carved the path to your current reality. This might sound harsh, but it's actually the most empowering truth you'll ever confront. Because once you understand that your mental patterns created your present circumstances, you unlock the power to create any future you desire. Take a moment to look around at your life right now. Your career, relationships, health, financial situation. None of these areas landed where they are by accident. They're the direct result of thousands of thoughts, decisions, and actions shaped by your mental habits. The promotion you wanted but didn't pursue, the relationship you stayed in too long, the health goals you kept postponing. These weren't just isolated choices. They were manifestations of deeply ingrained mental patterns. The human brain instinctively seeks to protect us from uncomfortable truths. It's far easier to point to external circumstances, bad luck, unfair treatment, lack of opportunities, than to acknowledge that our mental habits might be the primary force holding us back. But this protective instinct, while natural, becomes the first barrier to transformation. Neuroscience has revealed something fascinating about how our brains process responsibility and control. When we attribute outcomes to external factors, we activate regions associated with stress and anxiety. However, when we take complete ownership of our circumstances, we activate areas linked to problem solving and creativity. This biological response makes perfect sense. We can only solve problems we acknowledge as within our control. This principle of radical responsibility forms the cornerstone of mental strength. It's not about blame or self-criticism. It's about claiming your power to shape your reality. The moment you shift from an external to an internal locus of control, you transform from a passenger in your life to its driver. Sarah Blakely's journey to founding Spanx illustrates this principle in action. Before becoming the youngest self-made female billionaire in history, Blakely faced rejection after rejection. She spent 7 years selling fax machines door to door while developing her revolutionary hosiery idea in her spare time. Every manufacturer she approached told her the idea wouldn't work. Most people would have taken these rejections as evidence that external forces were against them. But Blakely's mental habits were different. When manufacturers said no, she didn't blame the industry's resistance to innovation or complain about gender bias. Instead, she took complete ownership of the situation. If manufacturers didn't understand her vision, she needed to explain it better. If they couldn't see the market potential, she needed to demonstrate it more effectively. This ownership mindset led her to drive across North Carolina, visiting manufacturing plants unannounced. When plant managers refused to meet her, she would wait in the parking lot to catch them after work. Rather than seeing these obstacles as unfair barriers, she viewed them as problems she needed to solve differently. Even after finding a manufacturer willing to produce her product, challenges continued. The male mill operators couldn't understand why women would want what she was designing. Instead of getting frustrated by this gender gap, Blakely took ownership of the communication challenge. She drew detailed diagrams and created prototypes herself, taking full responsibility for bridging the understanding gap. This pattern of radical responsibility continued throughout Spanx's growth. When major retailers initially refused to carry her product, Blakely didn't blame their conservative buying practices. She got creative, demonstrating the product's effectiveness in store bathrooms and personally calling customers to gather testimonials. Every obstacle became an opportunity to exercise her ownership mindset. The result? Spanx grew into a global brand valued at over $1 billion. But more importantly, Blakely's mental habits of taking complete ownership created a culture of innovation and problem solving that continues to drive the company's success. Your own journey to mental strength begins with identifying the subtle ways you might be abdicating responsibility for your circumstances. These patterns of blame and victimhood often disguise themselves as reasonable explanations or justifications. They sound like, "I would have started my business, but the economy is uncertain right now. I can't get in shape because my schedule is too busy. I would have spoken up in that meeting, but my boss doesn't like new ideas." Each of these statements contains a hidden surrender of power. They place the locus of control outside yourself, making you a victim of circumstances rather than a creator of solutions. The truth is, for every excuse you can make, someone else has faced the same circumstance and succeeded anyway. For every external barrier you identify, someone else has found a way around, through, or over it. This isn't meant to minimize real challenges. It's meant to emphasize that your response to those challenges is always within your control. Take Miguel's story. When the pandemic forced his family restaurant to close its dining room, his initial reaction was what you might expect. He blamed the circumstances, the government restrictions, the unfairness of watching larger chains stay open while small businesses suffered. His mental habits of external blame led to paralysis and depression. But after 2 months of watching his savings dwindle, Miguel had an epiphany. While he couldn't control the pandemic or restrictions, he had complete control over his response to them. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" he started asking, "What can I do about this?" This mental shift changed everything. Miguel took ownership of his situation and began innovating. He redesigned his menu for optimal takeout quality, personally called his regular customers to maintain relationships, and created finish-at-home meal kits that became hugely popular. He studied social media marketing and built a strong online presence. When other restaurants were closing permanently, Miguel's business actually grew. The key insight from Miguel's transformation wasn't that he worked harder. It was that he stopped waiting for external circumstances to improve and took complete ownership of his response to those circumstances. His mental habits shifted from victimhood to empowerment, and his reality shifted accordingly. These stories illustrate a crucial truth about mental strength. It begins with accepting total responsibility for your current reality. This doesn't mean you caused every circumstance in your life, but it means you're responsible for how you respond to those circumstances. The moment you embrace this responsibility, you reclaim your power to change anything. This ownership mindset becomes particularly powerful when facing adversity. Instead of asking, "Why me?" you ask, "What's next?" Instead of dwelling on what you can't control, you focus intensely on what you can. This isn't positive thinking or denial of reality. It's strategic allocation of mental energy toward productive channels. The process of building this ownership mindset starts with awareness. Throughout your day, your brain makes thousands of micro decisions about where to place responsibility. Most of these happen automatically, based on established mental habits. The first step in changing these habits is catching yourself in moments of blame or excuse-making. This brings us to the 24-hour ownership challenge. For the next full day, commit to taking complete responsibility for everything in your life. No excuses, no blame, no justifications. When something goes wrong, resist the urge to explain why it wasn't your fault. Instead, ask yourself, what part of this can I own? What could I have done differently? What can I do now? This challenge isn't about beating yourself up. It's about reclaiming your power. When you catch yourself making an excuse, and you will, don't judge it. Simply notice it. Redirect your thinking to what you can control and move forward. Pay attention to how different this feels, how it shifts your energy from helplessness to capability. During these 24 hours, you'll likely feel uncomfortable at times. This discomfort is actually a sign of growth. It means you're pushing against established mental patterns. Each time you choose ownership over blame, you're literally rewiring neural pathways in your brain, building new habits of mental strength. Chapter 3. Rewiring your mental operating system. Your mind is running on outdated software designed for a world that no longer exists. Every instinct, fear, and reactive pattern that feels so natural was optimized for a reality that vanished thousands of years ago. That quick surge of anxiety before public speaking. It's your ancient survival software misinterpreting social exposure as physical danger. The overwhelming urge to check your phone every few minutes. That's your primitive reward system, hijacked by modern technology. The tendency to catastrophize minor setbacks. An outdated threat detection system working overtime in a world it wasn't designed to navigate. Think about it. Your brain's core architecture evolved when survival meant spotting predators, finding food, and maintaining status within small tribal groups. Fight or flight responses, social anxiety, procrastination. These aren't personal failings. They're features of an operating system that hasn't received a major update since our ancestors were hunting and gathering on the savannah. But here's the revolutionary truth that neuroscience has uncovered. Your brain isn't hardwired. It's infinitely upgradable. Every thought, every practice, every conscious choice physically rewires your neural circuitry. This process, known as neuroplasticity, means you can systematically update your mental operating system to thrive in today's world. The science behind this is fascinating. When you engage in focused mental practice, your brain produces proteins called brain-derived neurotrophic factors, BDNF, which stimulate the growth of new neural connections. It's like your brain laying down new electrical circuits, creating faster, more efficient pathways for thoughts and behaviors. The more you activate these new circuits through deliberate practice, the stronger they become. Research has shown that even 8 weeks of consistent mental training can produce measurable changes in brain structure. Using advanced imaging techniques, they've documented increased density in regions associated with attention, emotional regulation, and decision-making. Your brain literally rebuilds itself based on how you use it. This isn't just academic theory. It's a principle that's been proven in some of the most dramatic human transformations. Let me tell you about David Goggins, who revolutionized his mental operating system so completely that he became almost unrecognizable to those who knew him before. In his early 20s, Goggins was working as a pest exterminator, weighing nearly 300 pounds and living what he calls a normal life, one governed by comfort, immediate gratification, and the path of least resistance. His mental software was running all the standard programs: avoid pain, seek pleasure, stay within your comfort zone. But Goggins made a conscious decision to rewrite his mental code. He began with a brutal self-assessment, identifying every limiting pattern and default response that kept him stuck. Then, systematically, he started overriding these patterns through what he calls callousing the mind, deliberately seeking out discomfort and challenging situations to build new neural pathways. His method was extreme, but illuminating. He would set his alarm for 4:30 a.m., not because he had to, but because he knew his brain would resist. Each morning became a battle to override the old programming that screamed for more sleep. He would run in the hottest part of the day, not despite the discomfort, but because of it. Each challenging situation became an opportunity to rewrite his mental response patterns. The transformation was remarkable. Within a few years, Goggins had not only lost over 100 pounds, but had become one of the world's premier ultramarathon runners. He completed some of the most grueling endurance events on Earth, including the Badwater 135, a 135-mile race through Death Valley in July. He became a Navy SEAL and later set a world record for pull-ups, completing 4,030 in 17 hours. But the physical achievements were just external manifestations of the real transformation, the complete reprogramming of his mental operating system. Goggins didn't just get fitter, he systematically rebuilt his relationship with pain, fear, doubt, and limitation. He created new neural pathways that transformed challenges from threats into opportunities for growth. The process of updating your mental software doesn't require such extreme measures, but it does follow the same principles. Just as a computer needs clear instructions to run new programs, your brain needs specific, consistent input to create new neural pathways. Take Jamie, a high school English teacher who struggled with anxiety and overwhelm. Her default mental programming would kick into overdrive at the slightest hint of conflict or unexpected change. Staff meetings would trigger racing thoughts. Confrontations with difficult students would leave her mentally exhausted. Parent conferences filled her with dread days in advance. Rather than accepting these responses as just how she was, Jamie approached them as outdated software in need of an update. She began by mapping out her typical mental reactions, noting how her brain would automatically catastrophize situations and generate worst-case scenarios. Working with these insights, Jamie developed a systematic approach to reprogramming her responses. She created what she called mental subroutines, specific thought patterns and behaviors she could practice in low-stress situations. When feeling overwhelmed, instead of letting her ancient threat detection system run wild, she would consciously engage her prefrontal cortex through structured problem-solving. She practiced these new patterns religiously, starting with small challenges and gradually working up to more stressful situations. Each successful execution strengthened the new neural pathways, making them more likely to activate in future situations. The real test came during a particularly challenging school year when her school faced multiple crises, including a sudden shift to remote learning and several staff members falling ill. To everyone's surprise, including her own, Jamie emerged as one of the school's most effective crisis managers. Her updated mental software allowed her to process challenges differently. Where others saw problems, her retrained brain automatically searched for solutions. When colleagues were paralyzed by uncertainty, her new mental patterns helped her break down complex situations into manageable steps. The same situations that would have previously triggered anxiety now activated her problem-solving capabilities. The key insight from Jamie's transformation wasn't that she eliminated anxiety. It's that she upgraded how her brain processed and responded to anxiety-producing situations. The old software was still there, but she had installed new programs that gave her better options for responding. This brings us to your own mental operating system. The first step in updating any software is understanding what's currently running. Take a moment to reflect on your default mental patterns, those automatic responses that kick in during stress, challenge, or uncertainty. These aren't random. They're programs running exactly as they were designed to run. The question is, are they optimized for the life you want to create? Here are 3 core mental patterns that most impact your daily life. First, identify your default stress response. When facing pressure or uncertainty, does your mental software automatically run programs of avoidance, aggression, or analysis? Rate how effectively this pattern serves you in today's world. Second, examine your learning subroutines. When confronted with new information or skills, does your brain default to quick mastery, methodical practice, or self-doubt? How well does this pattern align with your current goals? Third, assess your social programming. In group situations, does your mental operating system prioritize harmony, achievement, or security? Notice how this default setting impacts your relationships and opportunities. These patterns aren't your fault. They're the result of ancient programming combined with your unique life experiences. But understanding them is the first step toward conscious reprogramming. Just as you wouldn't run a modern business on decades-old software, you can't reach your full potential with outdated mental patterns. The beauty of neuroplasticity is that you can begin this update process at any moment. Every time you consciously choose a new response, you're writing new code in your mental operating system. Every time you challenge an automatic reaction, you're creating the possibility for new neural pathways. The key is consistency and conscious attention to the patterns you want to install. Chapter 4. The Clarity Protocol. In the time it took you to listen to this sentence, your brain processed over 11 million bits of information, yet you were consciously aware of only 40. Let that staggering disparity sink in. Every second, your mind is bombarded with a tsunami of sensory input, thoughts, and stimuli, while your conscious awareness catches merely a droplet of this vast ocean of information. This isn't just an interesting fact. It's the key to understanding why you sometimes feel overwhelmed, indecisive, or mentally foggy, despite your best efforts. Your brain is performing an incredible feat of filtration every moment of every day. But in our hyper-connected, information-saturated world, this ancient filtering system is being pushed to its absolute limits. Think of your mental clarity like a spotlight in a dark warehouse filled with countless moving objects. The spotlight can only illuminate a small area at a time, yet the success of your entire operation depends on pointing it at exactly the right things at exactly the right moments. When your filtering system gets overwhelmed, that spotlight becomes diffused, making everything harder to see clearly. The latest neuroscience research has revealed something startling. Mental fog isn't just an inconvenience. It's actively sabotaging your potential in ways you likely don't realize. Studies have shown that decision fatigue, the deterioration of our decision-making ability after prolonged mental exertion, doesn't just make us tired. It fundamentally alters how we process information and make choices. The impact of cognitive overload on performance is particularly striking. Research has demonstrated that high cognitive load can reduce our effective IQ by up to 13 points, equivalent to staying awake for 24 hours straight. This means that mental fog doesn't just make you feel less sharp, it literally makes you less capable. Notice how Satya Nadella transformed Microsoft by recognizing and addressing this fundamental challenge of mental clarity. When he took over as CEO in 2014, Microsoft was struggling with bureaucracy, competing internal factions, and a culture of complexity that made clear thinking nearly impossible. Nadella understood that the company's problems weren't primarily technical or strategic, they were cognitive. The organization had become so complex that even brilliant minds were struggling to maintain the clarity needed for innovation and decisive action. His solution wasn't to demand more hours or harder work from his teams. Instead, he implemented what he called a clarity-first approach. He began by dramatically simplifying Microsoft's mission statement from a paragraph of corporate jargon to just 13 clear words: to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. This wasn't just about marketing. It was about creating a mental focal point that could cut through the fog of complexity. Nadella then instituted what he called clarity breaks, mandatory periods during meetings where teams would step back and ensure everyone was thinking clearly rather than just reacting to information. He removed layers of approval processes not to speed things up, but to reduce the cognitive load that was clouding decision-making. The results were transformative. Microsoft's stock price tripled, but more importantly, the company regained its ability to innovate and adapt in a rapidly changing market. By prioritizing mental clarity, Nadella hadn't just changed Microsoft's processes, he had upgraded its collective cognitive operating system. But here's where most people get it wrong when trying to achieve similar clarity in their own lives. The typical advice, meditation, mindfulness, or simply trying to focus harder, often fails because it fights against how your brain naturally works. It's like trying to manually sort through those 11 million bits of information. It's exhausting and ultimately futile. The breakthrough comes from understanding that true clarity doesn't come from forcing your brain to focus harder. It comes from optimizing your brain's natural filtering mechanisms. Your neural architecture already has sophisticated systems for determining what deserves attention and what should be filtered out. The key is learning to work with these systems rather than against them. This principle proved transformative for Kai, an emergency room doctor who was struggling with the intense cognitive demands of their work. Every shift brought a relentless stream of critical decisions, each requiring perfect clarity despite exhaustion, interruptions, and intense pressure. Initially, Kai tried traditional approaches to maintaining mental clarity: meditation before shifts, taking deep breaths during crises, trying to focus harder when tired. Nothing worked consistently. The fog would still creep in during crucial moments, making each decision feel harder than the last. The breakthrough came when Kai started working with their brain's natural filtering mechanisms rather than against them. They developed what they called clarity triggers, environmental and behavioral cues that would automatically activate their brain's filtering systems. Before examining each new patient, Kai would touch the doorframe, a simple physical anchor that signaled their brain to clear out irrelevant information and focus on the present case. They reorganized their workflow to align with their brain's natural energy rhythms, handling the most complex cases during their peak clarity hours. Most importantly, Kai stopped trying to maintain perfect clarity at all times, an impossible goal that actually increased cognitive load. Instead, they learned to rapidly switch between different levels of mental focus, using their brain's natural filtering abilities to highlight what mattered most in each moment. The transformation was remarkable. Not only did Kai's decision-making improve, but they found they had more mental energy at the end of each shift. By working with their brain's natural mechanisms rather than fighting against them, they had discovered a sustainable path to clarity under pressure. Chapter 5. Building Your Mental Foundation. You're about to build the tallest skyscraper in the world. Where do you start? Not with the penthouse, not with the gleaming spire that will pierce the clouds. You start with something far less glamorous but infinitely more important: the foundation. Deep beneath the earth, invisible to all who will eventually marvel at your creation, you'll spend months laying the groundwork that will support everything above. Your mind works the same way. Right now, you might be eager to master advanced psychological techniques, to learn the mental equivalent of architectural flourishes and stunning design elements. But without proper fundamentals, you're trying to build a skyscraper on sand. This explains why so many attempts at mental mastery fail. People jump straight to advanced visualization techniques, complex meditation practices, or elaborate goal-setting systems without first establishing the basic mental infrastructure needed to support these practices. It's like trying to install floor-to-ceiling windows before you've poured the concrete foundation, a recipe for collapse. The science of peak performance has revealed three fundamental pillars that support all higher mental functions. These aren't exciting or flashy, but they are absolutely essential. Just as a skyscraper's foundation must account for soil conditions, wind loads, and seismic forces, your mental foundation must be built on emotional regulation, attention control, and recovery capacity. Think of emotional regulation as the bedrock upon which everything else rests. Without the ability to maintain emotional stability under pressure, even the most sophisticated mental techniques will crumble. Attention control acts as the structural reinforcement, providing the focus and discipline needed to execute any mental strategy effectively. Recovery capacity is your foundation's durability, its ability to withstand stress and maintain integrity over time. Research from the United States Naval Special Warfare Command has demonstrated that these fundamental capacities predict success in elite military training programs more accurately than any other mental or physical attribute. Studies at the Sports Science Institute of South Africa have shown that athletes who master these basics consistently outperform those who focus on advanced psychological techniques without proper foundational development. No one embodies this principle better than Eliud Kipchoge, the marathon world record holder and first human to run a marathon in under 2 hours. While many focus on his extraordinary achievement, few understand that Kipchoge's success stems from his mastery of mental fundamentals rather than complex psychological strategies. In his training camp in Kenya's Rift Valley, Kipchoge doesn't rely on sophisticated visualization techniques or elaborate mental preparation rituals. Instead, he focuses relentlessly on what he calls the simple disciplines. Basic practices that strengthen his mental foundation. Every morning, Kipchoge performs the same routine of basic tasks, from making his bed to cleaning his training space. These aren't just chores, they're deliberate exercises in emotional regulation and attention control. By maintaining perfect focus and emotional stability during mundane activities, he builds the mental foundation that allows him to maintain composure during the most challenging moments of a marathon. His approach to recovery is equally fundamental. Instead of using advanced psychological techniques to manage fatigue, Kipchoge focuses on mastering the basics of mental rest. He's famous for taking afternoon naps and maintaining strict sleeping schedules, simple practices that build his recovery capacity. The results speak for themselves. While other elite runners often crumble under pressure, Kipchoge maintains remarkable composure even in the most challenging races. His world records aren't just testimonies to physical preparation, but to the power of mastering mental fundamentals. This brings us to a critical truth about mental mastery. The basics, practiced perfectly, are advanced techniques. Just as a master martial artist spends decades perfecting basic moves, true mental strength comes from executing fundamental practices with increasing precision and consistency. Take the story of Ren, a technology entrepreneur who learned this lesson the hard way. After raising millions in venture capital for their startup, Ren threw themselves into every advanced productivity and mental performance technique they could find. They practiced complex visualization exercises, used sophisticated goal-setting frameworks, and followed elaborate morning routines recommended by successful CEOs. Despite all these advanced practices, Ren's mental state deteriorated. They struggled with decision-making, experienced frequent emotional outbursts, and eventually hit complete burnout. The breaking point came during a crucial investor meeting when they had a panic attack, their sophisticated mental techniques crumbling under real-world pressure. The turning point came when Ren met a former military psychologist who helped them understand why their approach was fundamentally flawed. Together, They stripped away all the complex techniques and focused on rebuilding Ren's mental foundation from the ground up. They started with basic emotional regulation exercises, simple breathing practices, and emotional awareness drills. Instead of elaborate productivity systems, they focused on basic attention control through single tasking and scheduled breaks. Rather than pushing through exhaustion with high-performance mindset techniques, they prioritized fundamental recovery practices like consistent sleep and quiet time. The transformation wasn't immediate or exciting, but it was profound. Within 6 months, Ren had developed greater mental stability than years of advanced techniques had provided. Their decision-making improved, their relationships with team members strengthened, and their company began to thrive, not despite the simpler approach, but because of it. I used to think mental strength meant having more tools in my psychological toolkit, Ren reflects. Now I understand it's about having an unshakable foundation that supports everything else. This brings us to you and your mental foundation. Right now, you might be tempted to skip ahead to more advanced concepts, but I urge you to resist that impulse. Instead, let's assess your current mental foundation through what I call the foundation audit. Take a moment to rate yourself on these fundamental capacities. Emotional regulation. How consistently can you maintain emotional stability under pressure? Can you experience strong emotions without being controlled by them? Attention control. What's your ability to maintain focused attention on a single task? How easily do you get distracted from important work? Recovery capacity. How well do you bounce back from mental exertion? Do you have reliable practices for mental rest and renewal? Be brutally honest in this assessment. Remember, identifying gaps in your foundation isn't a sign of weakness. It's the first step toward building genuine mental strength. Chapter 6. The Stress Advantage. What if everything you know about stress is not just wrong but backwards? Right now, you're probably doing everything possible to reduce, manage, or eliminate stress from your life. You've tried meditation apps, breathing exercises, and endless productivity hacks. Yet somehow, stress still controls your days, hijacks your thoughts, and holds you back from your true potential. Here's the truth that will transform your relationship with stress forever. You don't need less stress. You need better stress. The very force you've been fighting against could become your greatest ally in building mental strength. This isn't motivational rhetoric or positive thinking. It's backed by groundbreaking research in neurophysiology that reveals something extraordinary. Your brain and body become stronger through strategic exposure to stress, not by avoiding it. This phenomenon, known as hormesis, explains why vaccines work, why muscles grow after resistance training, and most importantly, why mentally resilient people seem to thrive under pressure. Recent studies have shown that people who view stress as enhancing rather than debilitating experience a 23% reduction in negative health impacts and a 43% increase in productive work output. But here's the key. It's not just about changing your mindset. It's about systematically rebuilding your stress response through controlled exposure. No one understands this better than Admiral William McRaven, former commander of U.S. Special Operations Command and architect of the mission that eliminated Osama bin Laden. During his 37 years as a Navy SEAL, McRaven helped develop what might be the most sophisticated stress inoculation program ever created. Most people think SEAL training is about learning advanced combat tactics, McRaven explains. But that's secondary. The primary goal is to systematically expose candidates to increasing levels of stress until their response to pressure becomes automatic and adaptive rather than overwhelming. The training begins with what SEALs call controlled chaos, simple tasks made challenging through environmental stress. Candidates must perform basic mathematics while being sprayed with cold water, They complete memory exercises while experiencing sleep deprivation. These aren't torture methods. They're carefully calibrated stress exposures that rewire the brain's threat response system. McRaven recalls a turning point in his own training. During Hell Week, we had been awake for 72 hours, performing constant physical challenges in freezing water. I was ready to quit. Then our instructor said something I'll never forget. Don't fight the stress. Use it. Let it sharpen you. That moment changed everything. I stopped seeing stress as my enemy and started seeing it as a tool for growth. The results speak for themselves. Navy SEALs routinely make life-or-death decisions under conditions that would paralyze most people. They maintain tactical precision while exhausted, cold, and under enemy fire. This isn't because they're superhuman. It's because they've systematically rebuilt their stress response through progressive exposure. You can apply these same principles to transform your relationship with stress. It starts with understanding the 3 levels of stress response. Level 1. Threat response. Your default setting. Stress triggers fight or flight, impairing decision-making and performance. Level 2. Challenge response. Where you want to be. Stress energizes and focuses you, enhancing performance. Level 3. Growth response. The ultimate goal. Stress becomes a catalyst for development and strengthening. Let me tell you about Maya, a junior analyst who would literally shake at the thought of giving presentations. Rather than avoiding speaking opportunities, she decided to apply stress optimization principles. She started small, practicing presentations alone, then to one supportive colleague, then to small groups. Each exposure was challenging but manageable, gradually rebuilding her stress response. The key was understanding that my anxiety wasn't trying to hurt me. It was trying to help me perform, Maya explains. Once I stopped fighting it and started working with it, everything changed. Maya created what she called her stress ladder, a progression of increasingly challenging speaking situations. She would deliberately expose herself to each level until it became comfortable, then move up. Within 6 months, she had transformed from avoiding any public speaking to actively seeking presentation opportunities. The breakthrough came during a critical client meeting. The lead presenter became ill, and Maya volunteered to step in. In the past, this would have terrified me, she says. But because I had systematically built my stress tolerance, I felt energized instead of overwhelmed. The stress sharpened my focus and enhanced my performance. Today, Maya leads training sessions for hundreds of employees. More importantly, she's discovered that her strengthened stress response carries over into every area of her life. Difficult conversations, tight deadlines, and complex problems that once seemed overwhelming now feel manageable. Your stress response can undergo the same transformation, but it requires abandoning the myth that stress is your enemy. Stop trying to eliminate stress from your life. Instead, learn to use it as the growth tool it was meant to be. For the next week, select one source of daily stress. Perhaps speaking up in meetings, handling difficult conversations, or tackling challenging tasks first thing in the morning. Instead of trying to avoid or manage this stress, deliberately lean into it. View it as an opportunity to strengthen your mental resilience. Document how your response changes as you shift from fighting stress to using it. Notice the physical sensations, emotional reactions, and performance outcomes. You're not just managing stress differently. You're rebuilding your entire relationship with pressure and challenge. Remember, the goal isn't to become stress-proof. It's to become stress-optimized, using this fundamental force of nature to forge greater mental strength and resilience. Chapter 7. Emotional Mastery. Your heart races, your muscles tense, your thoughts spiral, and in 3 minutes, you'll step into the most important negotiation of your career. Everything you've worked for hinges on what happens in that room. But right now, your emotions feel like they're hijacking your body and mind. This scenario isn't just about negotiation. It's about the fundamental challenge you face whenever stakes are high and emotions run deep. You've probably been taught that the solution is to control your emotions, or stay rational. But what if I told you that this widely accepted wisdom is actually sabotaging your performance? The truth about emotions is far more nuanced and powerful than most people realize. Your feelings aren't random disruptions to be suppressed. They're sophisticated information processing systems that evolved over millions of years. When you understand how to work with them rather than against them, emotions become your greatest allies in achieving peak performance. Recent neuroscience research has revolutionized our understanding of emotions. Your brain isn't simply reacting to events with pre-programmed emotional responses. Instead, it's constantly constructing emotions based on past experiences, present context, and future predictions. This means you have far more influence over your emotional experiences than previously thought. We can learn from Michelle Obama's journey from Chicago's South Side to becoming one of the most influential first ladies in American history. Early in her career, she struggled with what she called emotional imposter syndrome, feeling that her intense emotions, particularly around issues of race and inequality, were somehow inappropriate in professional settings. I used to think I needed to suppress my emotional responses to be taken seriously, she revealed in her memoir. But I gradually realized that my emotions weren't my weakness. They were my superpower. They connected me to people's real experiences and helped me understand what needed to change. During her time as First Lady, Michelle faced unprecedented scrutiny and criticism. Rather than trying to emotionally detach, she developed what she calls emotional precision, the ability to fully experience her feelings while choosing how to channel them productively. One pivotal moment came during the 2008 campaign when she was labeled an angry black woman by certain media outlets. Instead of suppressing her frustration, she used it to fuel a more authentic and powerful public presence. I learned to transform that anger into passion, that hurt into determination, she explains. The key was not to deny the emotions, but to direct them toward positive change. This approach, what I call emotional alchemy, is supported by groundbreaking research from Dr. James Gross at Stanford. His studies show that people who try to suppress emotions actually experience decreased cognitive performance and increased physiological stress. In contrast, those who learn to reframe and redirect emotional energy show enhanced decision-making and stronger interpersonal connections. The practical application of emotional alchemy involves 3 key shifts. First, abandon the myth of emotional control. Your goal isn't to manage emotions, but to harness their energy. Think of emotions like water. You can't control the flow, but you can direct it to turn a turbine and generate power. Second, develop emotional literacy. Start recognizing emotions as data points rather than disruptions. Every feeling contains valuable information about what matters to you and what needs attention. Third, practice emotional redirection. Instead of fighting against emotional responses, learn to channel them into enhanced awareness and purposeful action. Take Chen, a neurosurgeon who struggled with intense pre-operation anxiety. Traditional advice suggested he should try to stay calm and suppress his nerves. Instead, working with a performance psychologist, he learned to recognize his anxiety as heightened awareness that could enhance his surgical precision. I used to fight my pre-surgery jitters, which only made them worse, Chen shares. Now I understand that slight tremor in my hands isn't fear. It's my body ramping up its sensory acuity. The butterflies in my stomach aren't weakness. They're my system ensuring I'm fully alert and engaged. Chen developed a pre-surgery ritual that transformed his relationship with these emotions. Rather than trying to calm down, he would acknowledge each sensation as part of his preparation process. The racing heart meant his body was optimizing blood flow. The heightened alertness meant his brain was primed for focus. The results were remarkable. Not only did his technical performance improve, but his ability to handle unexpected complications during surgery enhanced significantly. By working with his emotions rather than against them, Chen accessed a level of situational awareness that proved invaluable in critical moments. The real breakthrough came during a particularly challenging tumor removal, he recalls. Instead of my anxiety clouding my judgment, it sharpened my perception. I noticed subtle tissue variations I might have missed if I'd been forcing myself to stay artificially calm. Chapter 8. The Focus Framework. When did you last experience true focus? Not the kind where you're juggling emails while half listening to a meeting, or scrolling through your phone while watching TV. I mean, complete, undivided attention. The kind that makes time disappear and brings your full capabilities to life. If you're struggling to remember, you're not alone. You're living in what neuroscientists call the attention economy, where every moment of your mental space is under siege. Your smartphone buzzes an average of 63 times per day. Your email inbox fills with 121 new messages. Social media algorithms compete for every spare second of your attention, and that's just the beginning. Here's what makes this situation truly dangerous. Your brain isn't designed for this environment. Research from Microsoft's Human Factors Lab reveals that your average attention span has dropped from 12 seconds to 8 seconds since the rise of smartphones, shorter than a goldfish. But this isn't just about focus. It's about your fundamental ability to think deeply, create meaningfully, and achieve what matters most. Dr. Adam Gazzali's groundbreaking research at UCSF shows that every time you switch tasks, you lose up to 40% of your productive time. That's not just inefficiency, it's a direct tax on your potential. Each interruption triggers a cascade of stress hormones, gradually rewiring your brain for distraction rather than depth. I knew a Cal Newport, author and professor of computer science at a major university. Early in his academic career, Newport struggled to balance teaching responsibilities with research demands. His productivity was scattered, his work quality inconsistent, and his stress levels soaring. I was doing what everyone else seemed to be doing, Newport recalls, keeping my email open all day, responding quickly to messages, trying to stay on top of everything at once. But I was producing a fraction of what I knew I was capable of. The turning point came when Newport discovered research on attention residue. Her studies showed that when you switch from task A to task B, your attention doesn't immediately follow. Part of it remains stuck on the first task, creating a cognitive drag that can last up to 23 minutes. Newport began experimenting with what he called deep work sessions, periods of completely undistracted focus. He started small with just 30-minute blocks, gradually building to multiple hours. The results were transformative. Within the first month, I completed more meaningful work than I had in the previous 3 months combined, he explains. But more importantly, I discovered what true cognitive performance feels like. It's not just about getting more done, it's about accessing parts of your mental capability that remain hidden when you're constantly distracted. Newport went on to publish multiple best-selling books while maintaining a full teaching load and securing tenure, all while working fewer total hours than most of his colleagues. The key wasn't working harder, but working with complete focus. The science behind this transformation is fascinating. When you maintain uninterrupted focus, your brain enters what neuroscientists call a flow state. Neural activity synchronizes, background mental chatter diminishes, and your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for complex problem solving, operates at peak efficiency. But here's what most productivity advice gets wrong. Focus isn't about forcing yourself to concentrate harder. It's about systematically removing the barriers to natural deep attention. Your brain wants to focus deeply. It's literally designed for it. The challenge is creating an environment that allows this natural capability to emerge. Nina discovered this truth the hard way. As the founder of a digital design agency, she watched her team's creativity and output steadily decline despite working longer hours. Client satisfaction was dropping, and talented designers were burning out. "We were stuck in a cycle of constant reactivity," Nina explains. "Everyone was always available, always responding, always connected. We thought that's what modern work required. But we were killing our ability to do the deep, creative work our clients actually needed." Rather than adding more productivity tools or extending work hours, Nina made a radical change. She implemented what she called design deep dive blocks, 3-hour periods where her entire team went offline. No emails, no messages, no interruptions, just focused creative work. The initial resistance was intense. Clients worried about delayed responses. Team members felt anxious about missing messages. But Nina held firm, explaining to clients that this practice would actually deliver better results faster. "The first week was chaos," she admits. "People didn't know what to do with uninterrupted time. But by week 2, something shifted. The quality of our work skyrocketed. Projects that used to take weeks were being completed in days. And surprisingly, our client communication improved because we were more thoughtful and organized with our responses." Within 3 months, Nina's agency had doubled its creative output while reducing working hours by 20%. More importantly, the team reported feeling more energized and fulfilled by their work. Chapter 9. Pain as your teacher. You're hardwired to avoid pain, and that's exactly why you're stuck. Think about it. Your brain's most fundamental programming, developed over millions of years of evolution, has one primary directive: avoid pain, seek pleasure. This biological imperative served our ancestors well, when survival meant avoiding predators and conserving energy. But in today's world, this same instinct has become your greatest obstacle to growth. Every time you feel that resistance before making an important phone call, every moment you hesitate before speaking up in a meeting, every day you postpone starting that challenging project, that's your ancient pain avoidance system activating. It's trying to protect you, but instead, it's keeping you trapped in a comfort zone that's becoming increasingly uncomfortable. The science behind this paradox is fascinating. Research reveals that your brain processes psychological discomfort in the same regions that handle physical pain. When you face rejection, challenge, or uncertainty, your interior cingulate cortex lights up exactly as it would if you touched a hot stove. No wonder avoidance feels so natural. Your brain literally can't tell the difference between social discomfort and physical danger. But here's where it gets interesting. Studies on hormesis, the biological phenomenon where controlled exposure to stressors strengthens an organism, show that strategic discomfort isn't just beneficial, it's essential for growth. Just as a muscle must be stressed to grow stronger, your psychological resilience can only develop through controlled exposure to challenges. Consider Malala Yousafzai's extraordinary journey. At age 15, she faced unimaginable trauma when Taliban gunmen attempted to silence her advocacy for girls' education with an assassination attempt. Many would expect such an experience to crush a young person's spirit. Instead, Malala emerged stronger, more determined, and more influential than ever. "The terrorists thought they would change my aims and stop my ambitions," she said in her famous UN speech. "But nothing changed in my life except this. Weakness, fear, and hopelessness died. Strength, power, and courage were born." What's remarkable about Malala's story isn't just her survival or recovery. It's how she transformed trauma into fuel for global impact. Rather than allowing pain to define her as a victim, she used it as a catalyst for becoming the youngest Nobel Prize laureate in history. Her experience exemplifies what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon where adversity becomes a launching pad for extraordinary development. The key distinction in Malala's approach wasn't the magnitude of her challenge. It was her relationship with discomfort. Instead of viewing pain as an enemy to avoid, she recognized it as a signal that she was pushing against important boundaries. This mental shift transformed her relationship with adversity from a source of fear to a source of power. This principle applies far beyond extreme situations. Your daily choices to embrace or avoid discomfort shape your potential in profound ways. Each time you choose comfort over growth, you're not just maintaining the status quo. You're actually weakening your capacity to handle future challenges. Think of psychological resilience like immune system strength. If you lived in a completely sterile environment, your immune system would weaken from lack of exposure to manageable threats. Similarly, avoiding all psychological discomfort doesn't make you stronger. It makes you more vulnerable when challenges inevitably arise. The solution isn't to seek out pain indiscriminately. Instead, you need to develop what I call strategic discomfort intelligence, the ability to distinguish between productive and destructive forms of challenge. This means learning to recognize the difference between the discomfort that signals growth and the pain that warns of genuine danger. Dev, a contemporary artist in Chicago, discovered this distinction through necessity. After initial success in local galleries, Dev found himself increasingly paralyzed by creative blocks. Each blank canvas became an opportunity for failure, each brush stroke a potential mistake. His work grew safer, more predictable, and ultimately less engaging. "I realized I had started creating from a place of fear," Dev explains. "Every artistic choice was filtered through the question, what if people don't like this? Instead of, what if this is exactly what needs to be expressed?" The turning point came when Dev developed a systematic approach to artistic discomfort. He began each day with what he called ugly paintings, pieces he deliberately made as challenging or unconventional as possible, with no intention of showing them to anyone. These exercises weren't about creating good art. They were about building comfort with creative risk. The first few weeks were excruciating, Dev admits. Every instinct screamed to return to safer territory. But gradually, something shifted. The fear of making bad art lost its power because I was deliberately making challenging work every day. Dev expanded this practice by seeking out increasingly uncomfortable artistic situations. He began painting in public spaces where people could watch him work. He submitted pieces to galleries that had previously rejected him. He even started live streaming his creative process, exposing his mistakes and uncertainties to real-time audiences. The result? Dev's work transformed. His next exhibition, titled Beautiful Disasters, featured his most daring and original pieces yet. Critics praise the raw authenticity and emotional depth of his new direction. More importantly, Dev discovered a new relationship with creative discomfort, one where uncertainty became an indicator that he was pushing into exciting new territory. The fear never completely goes away, Dev notes, but now it's more like a compass than a wall. When I feel that resistance, I know I'm probably heading in an interesting direction. This same principle applies to every area of your life where growth feels blocked. The path forward isn't about eliminating discomfort. It's about developing a new relationship with it. Think of discomfort as feedback rather than failure, as a signal of opportunity rather than a warning of danger. But this transformation requires more than just understanding. It demands systematic practice. This is where the discomfort ladder exercise becomes crucial. Take a moment now to identify 3 situations you typically avoid due to psychological discomfort. These might be professional challenges like public speaking, personal situations like difficult conversations, or creative endeavors like sharing your work publicly. Arrange these challenges in ascending order of difficulty, creating your personal discomfort ladder. The key is to make each step challenging enough to trigger growth, but manageable enough to avoid overwhelming your system. Remember, you're building a new relationship with discomfort, not trying to prove your toughness. For each rung on your ladder, create a specific, actionable plan for facing that challenge within the next month. The timeline is important. It creates urgency while allowing enough space for preparation. Your plan should include not just what you'll do, but how you'll prepare, what support you'll need, and how you'll measure success. Success in this context doesn't mean eliminating the discomfort. Instead, focus on your ability to move forward despite the discomfort, to take meaningful action even when your instincts scream for avoidance. This is how you build what psychologists call psychological flexibility, the ability to pursue what matters most, even when it triggers discomfort. Chapter 10. The Resilience Code. Resilience, recovery, plus growth. This simple equation challenges everything you've been taught about bouncing back from setbacks. While conventional wisdom suggests resilience is about returning to your previous state, the reality is far more powerful. True resilience isn't just about recovery. It's about leveraging adversity to reach heights you never could have achieved without that challenge. Your brain is already programmed with basic recovery mechanisms. When you face a setback, your natural instincts kick in to help you survive and return to homeostasis. But mere survival isn't enough in today's rapidly evolving world. The difference between those who simply survive challenges and those who use them as launching pads for extraordinary achievement lies in their understanding of this fundamental equation. Recent research reveals that up to 70% of people who experience significant trauma report some form of psychological growth. This isn't just feeling better, it's developing entirely new capabilities, perspectives, and strengths that wouldn't have emerged without the challenge. The key is understanding how to activate this growth response intentionally, rather than leaving it to chance. Think of it like a broken bone. When a fracture heals properly, the bone often becomes stronger at the point of the break than it was originally. This isn't just recovery, it's biological enhancement triggered by adversity. Your psychological resilience works the same way, but only when you approach setbacks with the right framework. Arianna Huffington's journey provides a powerful illustration of this principle. In 2007, despite building one of the most influential media platforms in the world, Huffington found herself face down on her office floor. She had collapsed from exhaustion, hitting her head on her desk and breaking her cheekbone. This public failure, a prominent CEO literally breaking under pressure, could have been devastating to her career and reputation. "I had all the external markers of success," Huffington recalls. "But by conventional standards of success, I was running myself into the ground. This moment of collapse could have been just another burnout statistic. Instead, it became the catalyst for a transformation that would impact millions. Rather than simply recovering and returning to her previous patterns, Huffington used this setback to completely reimagine her approach to success. She dove deep into the science of well-being, studying how sustainable performance actually works. This research revealed that the traditional model of success, sacrificing health and well-being for achievement, was fundamentally flawed. The more I studied, the more I realized that what we consider normal in our work culture is actually insane, she explains. This insight led to the creation of Thrive Global, a company dedicated to ending the burnout epidemic through behavioral change technology and media. What started as a personal crisis evolved into a global movement, helping millions of people transform their relationship with work and success. Huffington's experience demonstrates the profound difference between recovery and growth. If she had simply bounced back, getting enough rest to return to her previous working style, she might have prevented another collapse, but she would have missed the opportunity for transformation. Instead, she used the setback as data, revealing critical flaws in her success model that needed to be addressed. This principle of strategic setbacks forms the foundation of modern resilient science. Rather than viewing failures as obstacles to overcome, this approach treats them as essential feedback mechanisms that illuminate paths to break through performance. It's about developing what researchers call anti-fragility, the ability to become stronger precisely because of stressors and challenges. The application of this principle requires a fundamental shift in how you process setbacks. Instead of asking, "How can I recover from this?" the key question becomes, "What is this situation trying to teach me about my current approach?" This shift transforms failures from endpoints into data points, each one revealing crucial information about what needs to change in your strategy or execution. Consider Luis, a talented chef who invested everything into his dream restaurant in Austin, Texas. Despite exceptional reviews and a loyal following, the business struggled with thin margins and operational challenges. When the pandemic hit in 2020, these underlying issues became catastrophic, forcing Luis to close the restaurant and file for bankruptcy. "It felt like watching my life's work burn to the ground," Luis remembers. "I had defined myself as a restaurant owner for so long, I couldn't imagine being anything else." But rather than attempting to simply recover and try again with another traditional restaurant, Luis applied the strategic setback framework to analyze what his failure was trying to teach him. He began by examining every aspect of his failed business model, not just the final crisis that forced closure. This analysis revealed that his true passion wasn't running a traditional restaurant. It was creating innovative dining experiences that brought people together. The fixed location and high overhead of a traditional restaurant had actually been constraining this vision rather than enabling it. "The bankruptcy forced me to question every assumption I had about what success in the food industry looked like," Luis explains. This questioning led to a revolutionary idea. Instead of one fixed location, he could create a fleet of high-end food trucks that could bring exceptional dining experiences directly to where people gathered. Luis developed a business model that transformed the limitations of mobile food service into advantages. Each truck became a specialized kitchen, focusing on a different cuisine, allowing him to cater to diverse tastes and events. The lower overhead meant he could invest more in quality ingredients and talent. Most importantly, the mobility allowed him to test different markets and concepts without the risk of a fixed location. Within 18 months, Luis's food truck empire had surpassed his previous restaurant's best year of revenue, with better margins and more creative freedom. What's more, the business proved remarkably resilient to external shocks, as the mobile model allowed him to quickly adapt to changing conditions and opportunities. Looking back, the bankruptcy was the best thing that could have happened, Luis reflects. Not because failure is fun, it was devastating at the time, but because it forced me to reimagine what was possible. I'm not just doing better financially. I'm finally building the kind of food experience I always dreamed of creating. Luis's transformation exemplifies the resilience equation in action. He didn't just recover from failure. He used it as a catalyst to create something far beyond what his original model could have achieved. The setback revealed limitations in his approach that success might have hidden for years, allowing him to address fundamental issues rather than just symptoms. This brings us to the setback inventory exercise, a practical tool for transforming your own failures into strategic advantages. Take out a notebook and identify your 3 most significant recent setbacks. These could be professional failures, personal challenges, or any situation where things didn't go as planned. For each setback, you'll analyze 3 key dimensions. The visible failure. What actually happened? The underlying pattern. What systems or assumptions led to this outcome? The growth opportunity. What does this reveal about potential new directions? The key is to approach each failure with genuine curiosity rather than judgment. You're not conducting a post-mortem to assign blame. You're gathering intelligence to inform your next evolution. Pay particular attention to recurring patterns or assumptions that might be limiting your potential across multiple areas. Chapter 11. The Performance Mindset. You approach the bar loaded with weight that seems impossible. Your heart pounds. Sweat beads on your forehead. The crowd fades to a distant hum. In this moment, as an Olympic weightlifter preparing for a career-defining lift, the real battle isn't with the hundreds of pounds of steel before you. It's with the 6 inches between your ears. This scene plays out countless times across every domain of peak performance. Whether you're stepping onto a stage, into a boardroom, or up to any significant challenge, the difference between success and failure rarely comes down to physical capability. Your body knows what to do. The question is, will your mind let you do it? Most people believe peak mental performance is a natural gift, that some individuals are simply born with the ability to maintain extraordinary focus and composure under pressure. This assumption isn't just wrong, it's actively harmful to your development. The latest research in performance psychology reveals that peak mental states are trainable skills, accessible to anyone willing to master the underlying principles. Consider what happens in your mind when facing a major challenge. Your thoughts likely race to all the things that could go wrong. Your muscles tense. Your breathing becomes shallow. These reactions aren't character flaws. They're evolutionary programming designed to keep you safe. But in today's world, where physical survival rarely depends on split-second reactions, these ancient circuits often sabotage rather than serve you. The key insight emerging from performance research is counterintuitive. Peak mental states come from less effort, not more. When you watch elite performers in any field, you'll notice a peculiar quality. They appear almost relaxed in moments of extreme pressure. This isn't coincidence or natural talent. It's the result of systematic training in what psychologists call relaxed readiness. Roger Federer's journey provides a compelling illustration of this principle. Early in his career, Federer was known for his explosive temper and emotional volatility on court. Despite his extraordinary physical talents, he would often unravel mentally during crucial moments. The tennis world labeled him as another gifted player who lacked the mental strength to become truly great. What happened next challenges everything we think we know about mental toughness. Instead of trying to suppress his emotions or force himself to be calmer, Federer worked with his mental coach to develop a revolutionary approach to peak performance. They discovered that his emotional intensity wasn't the problem. It was his resistance to it that created mental interference. I had to learn that fighting against my natural reactions created more tension, not less, Federer explains. The breakthrough came when I stopped trying to be perfectly calm and instead learned to find clarity within whatever state I was experiencing. This insight led to the development of what his team called dynamic composure, the ability to maintain mental clarity regardless of emotional intensity. Rather than attempting to control his emotions, Federer learned to channel them productively while keeping his mind clear and focused on the task at hand. The results were transformative. Federer's legendary composure became as much his trademark as his fluid playing style. Even in the most pressure-filled moments, he maintained an almost supernatural clarity that allowed him to execute complex strategies while making split-second adjustments. What's crucial to understand is that Federer's mental transformation wasn't about becoming a different person. It was about learning to access peak mental states regardless of circumstances. This same principle applies whether you're serving for a Grand Slam title or preparing for a critical presentation. The science behind this approach reveals why traditional advice about mental performance, just stay positive, visualize success, try harder, often backfires under real pressure. These strategies rely on mental suppression or force, creating internal resistance that interferes with natural performance capabilities. Instead, peak mental states emerge when you achieve what researchers call effortless concentration, a state of relaxed readiness where your mind is clear but highly responsive. This state allows you to access your full capabilities while maintaining the flexibility to adapt to changing conditions. Dr. Taylor, a neurosurgeon at Boston General Hospital, discovered the power of this approach during a particularly challenging period in her career. Despite being technically skilled, she found herself increasingly anxious before complex procedures, especially those involving high-risk patients. I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to do: positive self-talk, visualization, intensive preparation. But somehow, the more I tried to control my mental state, the more tense I became, Taylor recalls. The breaking point came during a difficult tumor removal when her anxiety began interfering with her manual dexterity. This crisis led Taylor to explore alternative approaches to mental preparation. Working with a performance psychologist, she developed a systematic pre-surgery routine based on the principles of relaxed readiness. Instead of trying to eliminate pre-surgery anxiety, she learned to maintain mental clarity alongside it. The core of Taylor's new approach involved what she calls precision preparation, a carefully choreographed sequence that triggers her optimal mental state. The key was discovering that I didn't need to feel perfectly calm. I needed to maintain clear perception and steady hands, regardless of how I felt emotionally. Her routine begins 20 minutes before each surgery. Rather than reviewing the procedure again, which she's already thoroughly prepared for, she focuses on calibrating her mental state through a series of specific actions. First, she finds a quiet corner of the preparation area and performs a 2-minute breathing pattern, not to relax, but to optimize her physiological state for fine motor control. Next, she reviews 3 previous successful surgeries, focusing not on the technical details, but on recalling the mental state she operated in. Finally, she performs a brief hand-warming exercise that ensures optimal circulation for microsurgery. The routine isn't about pumping myself up or calming myself down, Taylor explains. It's about creating reliable access to my peak mental state, regardless of the circumstances or how I'm feeling that day. The results were remarkable. Not only did Taylor's technical performance improve, but she found herself better able to handle unexpected complications during surgery. Her improved mental clarity allowed her to make better decisions under pressure while maintaining the manual precision essential for neurosurgery. What surprised me most was discovering that peak performance didn't require me to become superhumanly calm or confident. It required learning to maintain clarity and capability alongside whatever emotions arose. That's a skill anyone can develop with the right approach. Taylor's experience highlights a crucial principle. Peak mental states aren't about achieving some perfect emotional condition. They're about maintaining optimal functionality, regardless of your emotional weather. This insight leads us to the peak state trigger practice, a systematic method for developing your own reliable access to peak mental performance. The practice begins with forensic observation of your existing peak performances. Think of 3 times when you performed at your absolute best. Instead of focusing on what you did technically, pay attention to the mental state you were in. What did you notice about your thoughts, your physical sensations, your emotional tone? Look for patterns across these experiences. Often, you'll discover that your peak performances shared certain mental qualities, even if the circumstances were different. These patterns form the foundation for developing your personalized pre-performance routine. The key is identifying specific, repeatable actions that reliably trigger these mental qualities. These triggers should be: your routine might include physical elements, like specific breathing patterns, mental components, such as reviewing past successes, or environmental cues, particular music or movements. The specific combination matters less than its reliability in triggering your optimal state. Begin experimenting with different combinations, treating each performance opportunity as a laboratory for refining your approach. Pay particular attention to what works under varying levels of pressure. A routine that helps during practice might need adjustment for high-stakes situations. The goal isn't to eliminate pressure or anxiety, but to maintain clear perception and effective action, regardless of your emotional state. This is what separates truly elite performers from those who succeed only under ideal conditions. Chapter 12. Breaking Mental Barriers. For centuries, experts claimed it was physically impossible to run a mile in under 4 minutes. Then, Roger Bannister did it. Within months, 16 others did too. What changed? Not human physiology, not training methods, not track surfaces. What changed was the collective understanding of what's possible. You're carrying invisible barriers right now, beliefs about what you can and cannot achieve that feel as solid as physical laws. These aren't gentle suggestions or mild preferences. They're ironclad rules, written into your mental operating system, defining the boundaries of your potential. But here's the revolutionary truth. These barriers exist only in your mind, yet they create very real limitations in your life. The science of breakthrough performance reveals something extraordinary. Your brain creates physiological limitations based on your beliefs about what's possible. When you're convinced something is impossible, your nervous system actually downregulates your physical capabilities to match that belief. It's a fascinating survival mechanism gone wrong. Your body literally holds itself back to match your mind's expectations. Recent research demonstrated this phenomenon in a groundbreaking study. Athletes were connected to sophisticated monitoring equipment while performing at their supposed physical limits. When researchers manipulated the athletes' beliefs about their capabilities through false feedback, their actual physical performance changed dramatically, some achieving up to 15% better results simply because they believed they could. This isn't just about athletics. Every domain of human achievement operates under the same principle. Your beliefs about what's possible create invisible walls that your brain and body dutifully respect. Break through the belief, and you break through the barrier. Diana Nyad's extraordinary achievement perfectly illustrates this principle. At age 64, she successfully swam from Cuba to Florida, a feat that had defeated her multiple times over 4 decades. The 110-mile journey took 53 hours of continuous swimming through shark-infested waters, powerful currents, and devastating jellyfish stings. What's remarkable isn't just that she accomplished this at 64. It's that she succeeded after failing in her 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, when she was theoretically in better physical condition. The difference? A fundamental shift in how she approached mental barriers. In my earlier attempts, I was fighting against limits. Age, distance, conditions, Nyad explains. The breakthrough came when I stopped seeing them as limits and started seeing them as variables to work with. The moment I truly believed age could be an advantage rather than a barrier, everything changed. Nyad discovered that her decades of failure had actually been preparing her for success. Her mature mindset brought patience and strategic thinking that her younger self lacked. What she originally saw as her biggest barrier, age, became one of her greatest assets. This transformation wasn't just philosophical. Nyad developed specific techniques for dismantling mental barriers. She created what she called barrier maps, detailed breakdowns of each limitation she perceived, followed by systematic plans to overcome them. Instead of trying to power through barriers with pure determination, she learned to deconstruct and dissolve them. The application of these principles in your life begins with understanding that barriers aren't obstacles to overcome. They're illusions to dispel. Every time you think, "I can't," you're really saying, "I believe I can't." This subtle distinction changes everything about how you approach limitations. Consider how this plays out in real situations. When you say, "I'm not creative," your brain actually suppresses creative impulses to match that belief. When you think, "I'm bad at public speaking," your nervous system creates anxiety and physical tension that makes speaking difficult. Your barriers become self-fulfilling prophecies. Breaking through requires a systematic approach I call barrier mapping. This process involves 3 key steps. First, identify your barrier with precise language. Instead of vague statements like, "I can't succeed in business," drill down to specific beliefs. I don't have the right educational background to start a successful company. Second, examine the evidence. What actual proof do you have that this barrier is real? Usually you'll find it's based on assumptions, past experiences, or other people's opinions rather than concrete facts. Third, create a barrier breakthrough plan, a series of small strategic actions that gradually dissolve the mental barrier while building evidence for a new belief. Aidan Mitchell's story demonstrates how this process works in practice. A middle school English teacher, Aidan had dreamed of writing a novel for 20 years, but was blocked by deep-seated beliefs about creativity and success. "I had this story inside me, but every time I sat down to write, I'd hear these voices. 'You're not a real writer. You don't have an MFA. You've never published anything. Who do you think you are?'" Aidan recalls. These weren't just doubts. They were barriers that had become so ingrained they felt like facts. Using the barrier mapping process, Aidan first identified the specific beliefs creating the block. "I need formal training to be a legitimate writer," and "successful authors start young." Then came the evidence examination. When I actually researched it, I discovered many successful authors started later in life. Mary Wesley published her first adult novel at 71. Raymond Chandler didn't start writing until 44. The evidence completely contradicted my beliefs. Armed with this insight, Aiden created a systematic plan to dissolve these barriers. Instead of trying to write a novel immediately, they started with small, achievable steps. First, a daily 100-word writing practice with no pressure for quality. Then joining a local writing group where they discovered other aspiring authors sharing similar fears. The key was treating it like teaching, something I already knew I could do well. Instead of trying to become a writer, I focused on teaching myself to write, breaking it down into manageable lessons just like I did for my students. Over 8 months, Aiden completed their first novel. While the book itself was an achievement, the real breakthrough was shattering the mental barriers that had held them back for decades. What amazes me isn't just that I wrote the book. It's how many other areas of my life changed once I understood how to break through mental barriers. That same process helped me overcome my fear of public speaking and finally start the after-school writing program I'd been dreaming about. This brings us to the Barrier Breakthrough Protocol, your systematic plan for shattering one significant self-imposed limitation over the next 30 days. The process begins with selecting a barrier that's currently limiting your potential. Choose something specific and measurable, rather than vague or general. The protocol involves creating a detailed map of your chosen barrier, examining its foundation, and developing a strategic plan to systematically dissolve it through small, consistent actions. Each day, you'll take one specific step that challenges the barrier while building evidence for a new belief. Remember, breaking through barriers isn't about forcing change through willpower. It's about systematically dismantling false limitations until what seemed impossible becomes inevitable. Just as those 16 runners followed Bannister through the 4-minute barrier, you'll discover that shattering one limitation creates a cascade effect, showing you what's possible across every area of your life. Chapter 13. Strategic Adaptability. The Grand Master makes an unprecedented move. Your carefully planned strategy crumbles. You have exactly 180 seconds to adapt, or lose everything. In this moment, every instinct screams to stick with your original plan, to force your way through with a strategy you spent months perfecting. But that path leads to certain defeat. Your only chance lies in complete reinvention, right here, right now. This isn't just about chess. It's about every moment in your life where reality refuses to follow your script. The promotion you were promised goes to someone else. The market shifts overnight. The pandemic shutters your business. The carefully constructed plans you built your life around suddenly become obsolete. In these moments, your ability to adapt isn't just an advantage. It's the difference between thriving and crumbling. Think your carefully crafted 5-year plan will protect you? Think again. The pace of change in today's world has rendered traditional planning obsolete. What worked yesterday becomes a liability tomorrow. The skills that got you here won't get you there. The only constant is change itself, and your success depends entirely on your ability to adapt. Recent neuroscience research reveals something fascinating about cognitive rigidity, our natural resistance to changing course. When faced with unexpected changes, the brain's threat response system activates, triggering what researchers call strategic freeze. This physiological response made perfect sense when our ancestors faced physical dangers. Staying still could save you from a predator. But in today's world, this same response keeps you stuck in outdated patterns while opportunities pass you by. Studies from the Harvard Innovation Lab show that companies with high adaptive capacity are 3.2 times more likely to succeed during periods of disruption than their more rigid competitors. More importantly, individuals who score high on psychological flexibility assessments report significantly higher levels of career satisfaction and advancement, regardless of their industry or role. Reed Hastings' transformation of Netflix provides a master class in strategic adaptability. In 2007, Netflix was dominating the DVD by mail market. They had perfected their logistics, built massive distribution centers, and created seemingly unbeatable competitive advantages. Then Hastings did something that seemed crazy at the time. He began actively dismantling this successful business model to bet everything on streaming. Most companies fail not because they make wrong decisions, but because they keep making the same decisions, even after the world has changed, Hastings explains. While competitors like Blockbuster clung to their existing business models, Netflix continuously reinvented itself. They shifted from DVD delivery to streaming, then from content distribution to content creation. Each transformation required abandoning successful strategies and venturing into unknown territory. The most remarkable aspect wasn't just that Netflix changed, it's how they changed. Instead of waiting for disruption to force their hand, they proactively disrupted themselves. When their DVD business was at its peak, they were already investing heavily in streaming. When their streaming service dominated the market, they were already pivoting to original content production. This wasn't just about technology or market trends. It required fundamentally rewiring the company's culture around adaptability. Hastings developed what he called context over control leadership. Instead of rigid plans and procedures, employees were given clear context about challenges and empowered to adapt their approach as circumstances changed. Most people in organizations take the opposite approach. They wait until change becomes unavoidable, then react from a position of weakness. They treat adaptability as a last resort instead of a core strength. This reactive pattern explains why so many freeze in uncertainty. The key to developing adaptive thinking patterns lies in understanding how your brain processes change. When faced with unexpected situations, your neural pathways typically default to established patterns, the mental equivalent of driving the same route to work every day. Breaking free requires deliberately creating new neural pathways through structured exposure to change. This is where most adaptability training fails. Simply telling yourself to be more flexible or embrace change doesn't work. You need systematic methods for overcoming your brain's natural resistance to uncertainty. This starts with what I call the adaptability triangle, 3 core practices that build your capacity for strategic reinvention. First, cultivate active uncertainty. Deliberately seek out situations that challenge your assumptions and force you to think differently. This builds your tolerance for ambiguity and strengthens your ability to think clearly in chaos. Second, develop multiple perspectives. For every situation, practice generating at least 3 different interpretations or approaches. This breaks your mind's tendency to lock onto single solutions. Third, embrace micro-experiments. Instead of big, risky changes, constantly run small tests that build your adaptability muscles while limiting downside risk. Layla's story perfectly illustrates how these principles work in practice. As a high school chemistry teacher with 15 years of experience, she had perfected her teaching methods through countless iterations. When the pandemic forced a shift to remote learning, everything she had mastered became instantly obsolete. My first instinct was to try replicating my classroom methods online, Layla recalls. I spent weeks trying to force my old approach to work in the new environment. The results were disastrous. Students were disengaged, test scores plummeted, and I was exhausted from fighting against reality. The breakthrough came when Layla started applying the adaptability triangle. Instead of trying to replicate her classroom experience, She began running micro-experiments with new teaching methods. She tried 5-minute video lessons followed by practical experiments students could do at home. She created virtual study groups where students taught concepts to each other. She even turned her chemistry lessons into a serialized story that unfolded over several weeks. Each experiment taught me something, even when it failed, she explains. More importantly, it changed how my students viewed learning. They stopped expecting perfect solutions and started embracing the process of discovery and adaptation. The results went far beyond surviving the pandemic. Layla's students showed better comprehension and retention than ever before. Parents reported increased enthusiasm for learning. When schools reopened, she didn't go back to her old methods. She created a hybrid approach that combined the best elements of both worlds. The biggest lesson wasn't about teaching chemistry. It was about the power of adaptability itself. Now I actively look for opportunities to challenge my assumptions and try new approaches. Every semester, I deliberately change at least one major aspect of my teaching method, even if the current approach is working well. This brings us to the Adaptability Accelerator exercise. For the next week, you'll deliberately change one significant daily routine. This isn't about random change. It's about systematic adaptation that builds your capacity for strategic reinvention. Choose a routine that's deeply ingrained in your daily life, your morning schedule, your work process, your exercise routine, or your communication patterns. Document your initial resistance, the adaptations you make, and the insights you gain. Pay particular attention to the moments when you feel the strongest urge to revert to your old patterns. The goal isn't to permanently change this routine, though you might discover better approaches. The goal is to strengthen your adaptability muscles by deliberately practicing strategic reinvention in a controlled environment. This builds the neural pathways you'll need when unexpected changes force you to adapt in higher stakes situations. Chapter 14. The Achievement Engine. Motivation is a lie. Achievement has nothing to do with feeling motivated. Every time you wait for inspiration to strike or the right mood to settle in, you're gambling with your future. The most dangerous myth in personal development is that successful people somehow harness endless wells of motivation to fuel their accomplishments. You've experienced this yourself. The surge of motivation after an inspiring video or powerful seminar. The rush of energy and determination that makes anything feel possible. The bold declarations about finally making that change, starting that project, or building that dream. And then, inevitably, the fade. The return to old patterns once that initial spark dies out. This isn't a personal failure or lack of willpower. It's the predictable outcome of relying on an unreliable force. Motivation is like weather. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it isn't. Building your achievement strategy around motivation is like planning an outdoor wedding without a backup plan. You're setting yourself up for disappointment. Recent reveals something fascinating about achievement patterns. When studying high performers across various fields, researchers discovered that consistent achievement had almost nothing to do with feeling motivated. Instead, success correlated strongly with having systematic approaches that functioned independently of emotional states. This finding challenges everything we think we know about achievement. We've been taught that great accomplishments require great motivation, that success comes from wanting it badly enough or staying inspired. The data tells a different story. The highest achievers aren't better at generating motivation. They've simply learned to succeed without it. Consider Kobe Bryant's legendary 4 a.m. workout routine. For over 20 years, Bryant maintained a pre-dawn training regimen that became almost mythical in basketball circles. He would arrive at the gym at 4 a.m., hours before his teammates, and put himself through an exhaustive series of drills and conditioning exercises. What's remarkable isn't just the early hour or the intensity. it's the consistency. Bryant maintained this routine through championships and injuries, through personal triumphs and public scandals, through every imaginable high and low of a 20-year professional career. The thing about 4 a.m., Bryant explained in his last season, is that it has nothing to do with feeling good. Most mornings, I don't want to be there. My body's sore, I'm tired, and my bed feels perfect. But that's exactly why the routine matters. If I waited until I felt like working out, I'd still be waiting. This wasn't about motivation or discipline in the traditional sense. Bryant had built a system so ingrained that it operated independently of his emotional state. The 4 a.m. workout wasn't a daily decision. It was simply what happened, like gravity or sunrise. The science behind this approach is fascinating. Neuroscience research shows that when we rely on motivation, we engage the prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for complex decision-making and willpower. This creates two problems. First, willpower is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day. Second, the very act of making decisions drains our mental energy. By contrast, systematic behaviors bypass this energy-intensive process. When we build proper systems, the behavior becomes automated, requiring minimal mental energy. It's the difference between having to decide to brush your teeth every morning versus just doing it automatically as part of your routine. This is where most achievement strategies fail. They focus on generating more motivation instead of building systems that work without it. It's like trying to solve a car's reliability problems by adding more fuel instead of fixing the engine. The key lies in understanding the three components of systematic achievement. Environmental design, creating spaces and situations that make desired behaviors easier and undesired behaviors harder. Trigger stacking, linking new behaviors to existing habits to leverage established neural pathways. Success scaffolding, building progressive systems that grow in complexity as capability increases. Marcus's transformation from struggling freelancer to successful business owner perfectly illustrates these principles in action. 3 years ago, Marcus was caught in the typical freelancer trap: inconsistent work patterns, feast or famine income cycles, and constant anxiety about finding the next project. I kept thinking if I could just stay motivated enough, work hard enough, everything would fall into place, Marcus recalls. I'd have these bursts of productivity where I'd work 16-hour days, then crash for a week. My income looked like a heart monitor, big spikes followed by flat lines. The turning point came when Marcus stopped trying to motivate himself and started building systems instead. He began with environmental design, converting his spare bedroom into a dedicated workspace with all the tools and resources he needed easily accessible. More importantly, he removed all potential distractions: no TV, no personal items, nothing but work essentials. Next, he implemented trigger stacking. Instead of trying to force himself to start working each morning, he linked his work routine to his existing coffee habit. The simple act of making coffee became the trigger for a series of automated behaviors: checking project schedules, updating task lists, and beginning his first work block. Finally, he created success scaffolding by breaking his work into progressive systems. He started with a basic system: 25-minute focused work sessions, followed by 5-minute breaks. As this became automatic, he added layers of complexity: client communication protocols, project management frameworks, and business development systems. The biggest change wasn't in what I did, but in how I thought about work, Marcus explains. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like working?" each morning, I simply followed my systems. Some days I felt great, others I felt terrible, But the work got done regardless. Within 6 months, Marcus's income stabilized. Within a year, it doubled. Today, he runs a successful digital agency with 5 employees, all operating on systematic principles rather than motivation-dependent approaches. The irony is that once I stopped relying on motivation, I actually felt more motivated more often, Marcus notes. There's something energizing about consistent progress, even when it's not dramatic or exciting. This brings us to the System Sprint Challenge. Over the next 30 days, you'll select one important goal and build a motivation-independent system for achieving it. This isn't about willpower or inspiration. It's about creating a reliable framework for consistent progress. Start by choosing a goal that matters to you, but has resisted motivation-based approaches. Then, apply the 3 components of systematic achievement. Document your system's performance daily, focusing on execution rather than results. Pay particular attention to the moments when motivation is lowest. These are your opportunities to prove and refine your system's reliability. Remember, the goal isn't to feel more motivated. The goal is to make motivation irrelevant to your success. When you build systems that work regardless of how you feel, you transform from someone who occasionally achieves to someone who achieves systematically. Chapter 15. Mental Time Travel. Where do you spend most of your mental energy? Reliving the past, worrying about the future, or experiencing the present? The answer reveals more about your mental performance than any personality test or skill assessment ever could. Your relationship with time isn't just a matter of scheduling or productivity. It's the foundation that determines how effectively you navigate every challenge, decision, and opportunity in your life. Most people unconsciously drift between time orientations, letting circumstances dictate whether they're trapped in past regrets, consumed by future anxieties, or rarely present in the current moment. This temporal ping-pong exhausts mental resources and fragments focus, creating a perpetual state of partial attention that undermines performance in every area of life. Recent breakthroughs in temporal psychology have revealed something fascinating about how your brain processes time. Research from the Temporal Cognition Laboratory at Stanford shows that your perception of time isn't just a passive experience. It's an active force that shapes decision-making, emotional regulation, and performance under pressure. When you understand how to strategically shift your time orientation, you unlock new levels of mental clarity and operational effectiveness. The most striking finding is that high performers don't simply pick one temporal orientation and stick with it. Instead, they develop what researchers call temporal agility, the ability to consciously shift between past, present, and future orientations based on the demands of the situation. This skill turns time from an abstract concept into a practical tool for enhancing mental performance. Angela Merkel's leadership during multiple European crises provides a masterclass in strategic time orientation. As German Chancellor, Merkel faced a series of unprecedented challenges: the Eurozone crisis, the refugee crisis, and later the COVID-19 pandemic. What distinguished her approach was her methodical shifting between temporal perspectives to optimize decision-making. During the height of the European financial crisis in 2008, Merkel's advisors pushed for immediate, dramatic action to calm the markets. Instead, she deliberately shifted to past orientation, analyzing historical patterns of financial crises and their solutions. This temporal perspective revealed that hasty interventions often created larger problems down the line. She then moved to future orientation, modeling potential long-term consequences of different approaches. Finally, she returned to present orientation to execute a measured response that balanced immediate needs with long-term stability. In crisis, pressure builds to act quickly. one of Merkel's senior advisors noted. But she had this remarkable ability to step outside the immediate moment, gather insights from historical patterns, project future implications, then return to the present with clearer perspective. It wasn't indecision. It was strategic temporal navigation. This approach earned Merkel criticism for being too methodical in crisis moments, but the results spoke for themselves. Germany emerged from multiple crises in a stronger position than nations that opted for reactive, present-focused responses. Her mastery of temporal orientation transformed potential disasters into opportunities for systematic progress. The key insight from Merkel's approach isn't just about being methodical. It's about understanding which temporal orientation serves you best in different situations. Past orientation provides context and learning. Future orientation enables strategic planning, and present orientation optimizes execution. The magic lies in knowing when to employ each one. Most people get this backwards. They get lost in past regrets when they need future focus, worry about future scenarios when they need present awareness, or fixate on the present moment when they need historical perspective. This misalignment of temporal orientation and situational demands creates unnecessary mental friction and compromises performance. Your brain has 3 distinct temporal processing networks, each specialized for different aspects of performance. The retrospective network analyzes past experiences and extracts patterns and lessons. The perspective network simulates potential futures and evaluates possible outcomes. The present moment network optimizes current performance and environmental awareness. These networks compete for neural resources. When you're caught in temporal conflict, like trying to stay present while worrying about the future, you create cognitive gridlock that drains mental energy and degrades performance. The solution isn't to eliminate any particular temporal orientation, but to develop precise control over when and how you engage each one. This requires understanding the optimal temporal orientation for different types of challenges. Strategic planning, future orientation primary, past orientation secondary. Decision-making, balance past and future orientation. Performance execution, present orientation primary. Learning growth, past orientation primary, future orientation secondary. Crisis response, rapid cycling between all 3 orientations. Chapter 16, The Reality Architect. Your current reality is simply the blueprint you unconsciously designed years ago. Just as an architect's plans determine every detail of a building long before construction begins, the mental frameworks you've built, often without realizing it, shape every aspect of your daily experience. Imagine unfolding an architect's blueprint. Each line, each measurement, each specification determines what will manifest in physical form. Your mental patterns work the same way, creating the invisible architecture that shapes your visible reality. The thoughts you habitually think, the beliefs you unconsciously hold, the perspectives you automatically adopt. These are the lines and measurements of your life's blueprint. Recent breakthroughs in cognitive psychology and neuroplasticity have revealed something remarkable. Your brain physically restructures itself based on your dominant thought patterns. Research from the Neural Architecture Laboratory at Harvard shows that repeated thought patterns create distinct neural pathways, literal blueprints in your brain that determine how you perceive and interact with reality. The most fascinating discovery is that these neural blueprints aren't fixed. Just as an architect can revise plans before construction, you can consciously redesign your mental architecture at any point. This isn't positive thinking or wishful visualization. It's systematic reconstruction of the neural patterns that shape your experienced reality. Oprah Winfrey's transformation from a troubled childhood in rural Mississippi to becoming one of the most influential media figures in history illustrates the power of consciously redesigning mental blueprints. Born into poverty and experiencing severe trauma in her early years, Winfrey's initial mental architecture was built on limitations, fear, and scarcity. "I grew up with a blueprint that told me what wasn't possible," Winfrey has shared. "But at some point, I realized I could draw new lines, create new spaces, design a different reality." Her transformation began with recognizing how her existing mental patterns were constraining her possibilities. Despite early success in local television, she noticed how her inherited blueprints around worth, capability, and possibility were limiting her vision and actions. Instead of accepting these limitations, Winfrey systematically redesigned her mental architecture. She started by examining her core beliefs about what was possible for someone with her background. When she identified limiting patterns, she consciously designed new neural pathways through deliberate thought and action patterns. One of her most powerful blueprint revisions came around the concept of influence. Rather than seeing television as just entertainment, she redesigned her mental framework to view it as a platform for transformation. This shift in mental architecture led to revolutionary changes in how she approached her show, ultimately creating an entirely new category of meaningful media. "The biggest breakthrough wasn't getting the show," Winfrey noted. "It was redesigning my internal blueprint about what a show could be, what influence could mean, what was truly possible when you remove self-imposed limitations." The results of this mental redesign are well documented. Winfrey built not just a successful show, but a media empire that has transformed millions of lives. More importantly, she demonstrated that conscious revision of mental blueprints can literally reshape reality. Your brain operates like a sophisticated architectural firm, constantly drawing and refining the blueprints of your experience. Every thought reinforces existing patterns or creates new ones. Every belief acts as a specification that determines what you'll notice, pursue, or achieve. Every perspective shapes how you interpret and interact with the world around you. The problem is that most people never examine their blueprints. They live in mental structures designed by past experiences, cultural conditioning, and random circumstances rather than conscious choice. This unconscious architecture creates invisible barriers that feel like external limitations. Think about your current reality in any area: relationships, career, health, finances. The patterns you're experiencing aren't random. They're the direct manifestation of mental blueprints you've been carrying and reinforcing, often without awareness. The good news is that you can revise these blueprints at any time. The process begins with understanding three fundamental principles of mental architecture. First, your current reality is a perfect reflection of your existing blueprints. This isn't about blame. It's about recognizing the direct connection between mental patterns and physical experience. Second, all blueprints are learned designs, not permanent structures. Even deeply ingrained patterns can be revised through conscious redesign and consistent reinforcement. Third, new blueprints create new realities as reliably as old blueprints created your current situation. The key is ensuring your mental architecture aligns with your desired experience. Kit's transformation of a toxic department culture demonstrates these principles in action. As a middle manager at a technology company, Kit inherited a team known for infighting, low morale, and poor performance. Initial attempts to change the external environment, new policies, team-building exercises, structural reorganization, produced minimal results. "I was trying to renovate the building without updating the blueprints," Kit explains. "Then I realized the department's culture was perfectly reflecting my own mental architecture around leadership and possibility." Examining their mental blueprints, Kit discovered limiting patterns. beliefs about authority requiring control, assumptions about human nature defaulting to conflict, perspectives that saw problems as permanent rather than changeable. Instead of continuing to fight external symptoms, Kit focused on redesigning their mental architecture. They consciously developed new blueprints based on different assumptions: leadership as enablement rather than control, human nature as fundamentally collaborative, problems as opportunities for innovation. The hardest part was maintaining the new blueprints, while the old reality was still visible, Kit notes. But gradually, as my mental architecture shifted, the department's dynamics began to transform. Within 6 months, the department's culture showed remarkable changes. Collaboration increased, conflicts decreased, and performance metrics improved significantly. The external shifts directly reflected Kit's internal redesign. The most surprising thing was how natural the transformation felt once it started happening, Kit shares. It wasn't about forcing change. It was about creating a new blueprint that made positive interactions the default, rather than the exception. The Reality Blueprint exercise helps you apply these principles to your own life. Select 3 key areas where you'd like to experience different results. For each area, map your current blueprint. Identify the dominant thought patterns that shape your experience in this area. What do you automatically believe is possible or impossible? What assumptions guide your decisions and actions? Examine the origins. Trace where these mental patterns came from. Which blueprints were inherited from others? Which were created from past experiences? Which were unconsciously absorbed from your environment? Design new architecture. Create conscious blueprints aligned with your desired reality. What thought patterns would naturally produce different results? What perspectives would make your goals inevitable rather than difficult? The key is being as specific and detailed as an architect drawing actual plans. Vague intentions don't create new neural pathways. Clear, precise blueprints give your brain exact specifications for rewiring. Chapter 17. Decision-Making Mastery. 3 seconds to decide. Millions at stake. Every option seems wrong. Your pulse quickens as time slows to a crawl, each heartbeat echoing the weight of impending consequences. This isn't just about money. It's about trust, reputation, and the countless lives your decision will impact. Welcome to the reality of high-stakes decision-making, where clarity isn't just valuable, it's vital. You face pivotal decisions every day, from career-altering choices to split-second judgments that shape relationships and opportunities. Yet the human brain, despite its remarkable capabilities, often falters precisely when clear thinking matters most. Why? Because your decision-making apparatus evolved for a simpler world, where choices were fewer and stakes rarely extended beyond immediate survival. Recent neuroscience research from the Decision Dynamics Laboratory reveals a startling truth. Your brain makes up to 35,000 decisions daily, depleting your mental resources like a battery draining throughout the day. This phenomenon, known as decision fatigue, progressively erodes your judgment quality, often without you noticing. More concerning still, studies show that under pressure, your brain automatically activates shortcuts and biases that might have helped our ancestors avoid predators, but can prove disastrous in modern complex situations. These mental shortcuts, while efficient, often lead to systematic errors in judgment precisely when accuracy matters most. Ray Dalio's journey at Bridgewater Associates offers a masterclass in transforming decision-making from an art of gut instinct into a science of systematic excellence. In 1975, early in his career, Dalio made a catastrophic market prediction that nearly destroyed his firm. Instead of surrendering to the myth that good decision-making comes from experience alone, he began a methodical study of his own decision-making process. I realized that my biggest mistakes weren't from lacking information, Dalio noted, but from the way my brain processed that information under pressure. I needed a system that would work regardless of emotional state or cognitive fatigue. Over decades, Dalio developed a revolutionary approach he called principles, a systematic framework for making decisions that stripped away emotional bias and cognitive distortion. The results were extraordinary. Bridgewater became the world's largest hedge fund, largely through superior decision-making in complex, high-pressure situations. Key to Dalio's approach was the recognition that all decisions, no matter how complex, could be broken down into clear principles and processes. He implemented tools like believability-weighted decision-making, where input from team members was weighted based on their demonstrated expertise in specific areas rather than hierarchy or conviction. The system worked because it acknowledged human psychological limitations, Dalio explained. Instead of fighting our cognitive biases, we built a framework that systematically accounted for them. But Dalio's most powerful insight wasn't about the decisions themselves. It was about the process of improving decision-making ability. He created what he called a decision journal, meticulously recording not just what choices were made, but the thinking process behind them and their eventual outcomes. This systematic approach to learning from decisions transformed Bridgewater's capability over time. Each choice became not just a moment of judgment, but an opportunity for systematic improvement of the decision-making process itself. The reality is that most people's approach to important decisions resembles throwing darts blindfolded. They rely on instinct, emotion, and incomplete information, then wonder why outcomes feel random. But high-stakes decision-making can be mastered through systematic practice and the right framework. 3 critical myths about decision-making keep most people trapped in suboptimal patterns. First, the myth that good decisions require perfect information. In reality, superior decision-makers excel at making clear choices with limited data. The key isn't having all the information, but having a systematic process for evaluating what information matters most. Second, the myth that pressure improves performance. Research shows that pressure actually narrows cognitive bandwidth, reducing access to critical thinking resources precisely when you need them most. The solution isn't learning to embrace pressure, but building systems that maintain clear thinking despite it. Third, the myth that decision-making ability is fixed. Like any skill, your capacity for clear judgment can be systematically improved through deliberate practice and the right feedback loops. Chapter 18. The Power of Perspective. 2 mountain climbers stand before the same looming storm. Dark clouds gather, wind howls, and visibility drops to mere feet. One climber sees certain death approaching. Their heart races with fear, muscles tense with panic, mind clouded by visions of disaster. The other climber's eyes light up with excitement, their body energized by challenge, mind sharp with strategic possibilities, spirit alive with adventure. Same storm, same objective conditions, radically different experiences and outcomes. What makes the difference? It's not equipment, training, or even experience. The crucial factor is perspective, the lens through which you view and interpret reality. Your brain processes over 11 million bits of information every second, but your conscious mind can only handle about 40 bits. This means you're not experiencing objective reality. You're experiencing your brain's heavily filtered and interpreted version of reality. The question isn't whether you're viewing life through a lens. You always are. The question is whether you're choosing that lens consciously or letting unconscious patterns choose it for you. Recent breakthrough research from the Performance Psychology Institute demonstrates how perspective shifts create measurable changes in everything from hormone levels to neural activation patterns. When subjects were taught to consciously shift their perspective on stressful situations, researchers observed remarkable transformations. Stress hormones decreased by up to 23%, problem-solving capability increased by 31%, and recovery time from setbacks was cut nearly in half. But perhaps no example better illustrates the power of perspective than Nelson Mandela's extraordinary transformation of 27 years of imprisonment into preparation for leadership. Confined to a tiny cell on Robben Island, Mandela made a conscious choice that would alter not only his fate, but the future of a nation. He decided to view his imprisonment not as punishment, but as preparation. I had no choice but to use the time to prepare myself for the role I might one day have to play. Mandela later wrote, "I was preparing myself for the future." This perspective shift was more than positive thinking. It was a complete reframing that transformed every aspect of his prison experience into opportunity. When forced to break rocks in the prison quarry, Mandela used the time to study his guards, learning their language and psychology. He transformed his cell into a university, organizing what became known as Mandela University, where prisoners taught each other everything from literacy to advanced mathematics. Even the mundane routine of prison life became, in his view, training in patience and strategic thinking. This perspective shift didn't just help Mandela endure, it fundamentally transformed him. The man who emerged after 27 years possessed exactly the qualities needed to lead South Africa through its peaceful transition. Extraordinary patience, deep understanding of his opponents, and the ability to maintain focus on long-term goals despite immediate pressures. The power of Mandela's example isn't in the specific perspective he chose, but in demonstrating how a conscious shift in perspective can transform even the most challenging circumstances into opportunities for growth and preparation. This brings us to the practical question: how can you develop this kind of perspective flexibility in your own life? The key lies in understanding that perspective isn't something you have, it's something you do. Like any skill, it can be systematically developed through practice. Wei's story provides a compelling example of how this works in everyday life. As a struggling artist in New York, Wei faced mounting bills, a tiny studio apartment, and dwindling savings. The conventional perspective would frame this as pure hardship, obstacles to creative work. Instead, Wei made a conscious decision to view these constraints as creative catalysts. "I had been waiting for perfect conditions to make my best work," Wei recalls. "But when I shifted my perspective on constraints, everything changed. Limited materials meant I had to get more creative. Financial pressure pushed me to work faster and trust my instincts. The small space forced me to think differently about scale and medium." This perspective shift led to a breakthrough series of miniature sculptures created from found materials, work that eventually caught the attention of major galleries. More importantly, it transformed Wei's entire relationship with obstacles. Now, when I face constraints, my first thought isn't, how do I eliminate this? But how might this limitation serve my art? This shift from seeing obstacles as barriers to viewing them as creative catalysts fundamentally transformed both Wei's work and experience as an artist. The key insight from Wei's story isn't about positive thinking or finding silver linings. It's about developing the ability to consciously shift perspective based on what serves your goals and growth. Sometimes the most useful perspective isn't the most positive one. It's the one that enables the most effective action. This brings us to the Perspective Pivot Protocol, a systematic method for developing perspective flexibility. Choose one challenging situation you're currently facing. Then, systematically explore it through 5 distinct lenses. The strategic lens. What opportunities might the situation create? The learning lens. What skills or insights could this help you develop? The future lens. How might this prepare you for important future challenges? The connection lens. How might this situation strengthen key relationships? The growth lens. How is this situation testing and expanding your capabilities? For each lens, document specific insights and potential action steps. The goal isn't to find the right perspective, but to develop the ability to shift perspectives consciously based on what best serves your growth and goals. Remember, the storm hasn't changed, but you can choose how you see it. Chapter 19. Mental Alchemy. Medieval alchemists spent centuries trying to turn lead into gold. You're about to learn something far more valuable: how to transform mental poison into power. While those ancient practitioners labored in vain with physical elements, you possess something infinitely more transformative: the ability to convert life's most challenging experiences into catalysts for extraordinary growth. This isn't about positive thinking or finding silver linings. This is about mastering the science of mental alchemy, a systematic process for transmuting adversity into advantage. Recent research in post-traumatic growth has revealed something remarkable. Up to 70% of people who experience significant trauma report positive psychological changes as a direct result. These aren't just coping mechanisms. They're fundamental transformations in capability, perspective, and power. The key lies in understanding that adversity creates unique conditions for accelerated development, but only if you know how to harness it. Your brain's natural tendency is to treat negative experiences like poison, something to be avoided or expelled. But just as certain venoms can be transformed into life-saving medicines, your greatest challenges contain the raw materials for extraordinary breakthrough. Consider how Elon Musk transformed repeated SpaceX failures into the foundation for revolutionary success. In 2008, after 3 consecutive rocket launches ended in spectacular explosions, SpaceX was nearly bankrupt. Most observers saw only disaster, hundreds of millions of dollars literally going up in flames. But Musk applied what he calls engineering alchemy, systematically converting each failure into precise technical insights. Each failure contains the seed of the solution, Musk explained. The key is learning to extract it systematically. Rather than trying to avoid or minimize the pain of these setbacks, he developed a rigorous process for transmuting them into technical breakthroughs. Every explosion was meticulously analyzed, every failure pattern mapped, every lesson integrated into the next iteration. This wasn't just positive thinking. It was systematic transformation of negative experience into practical advantage. The result? SpaceX became the first private company to send spacecraft to the International Space Station, revolutionizing space travel in the process. Those early failures weren't obstacles to success. They were the raw material from which success was forged. But mental alchemy isn't just for billion-dollar space companies. It's a practical skill you can apply to any challenge, any setback, any poison that life serves up. The key lies in understanding the 3 phases of mental transformation. First comes extraction, learning to identify and isolate the useful elements within negative experiences. Just as ancient alchemists had to separate valuable metals from raw ore, you must develop the ability to distinguish between the pain of an experience and its potential value. Next is refinement, processing raw negative experience into useful insights and capabilities. This requires systematic reflection and analysis, converting vague pain or frustration into specific understanding. What exactly made this experience challenging? What capabilities would have made it easier? What patterns or principles can be extracted? Finally comes transformation, actively converting refined insights into practical advantage. This is where mental alchemy becomes real-world power. How can these insights be applied to create better outcomes? What new approaches or capabilities can be developed based on this understanding? Zara's story powerfully illustrates how this process works in practice. Diagnosed with a chronic autoimmune condition in her early 30s, she initially experienced it as pure poison, a devastating limitation that threatened to destroy her career and quality of life. But rather than simply trying to cope with or overcome her illness, she began approaching it as raw material for transformation. I started documenting everything, not just symptoms and treatments, but patterns, insights, discoveries about how different factors affected my condition, she explains. It wasn't about finding a cure. It was about developing a deeper understanding of how my body and mind work together. This systematic approach to extracting value from her challenge led to unexpected breakthroughs. She discovered subtle patterns in how stress, sleep, and various activities affected her symptoms. She developed innovative strategies for managing energy and maintaining productivity despite physical limitations. Most importantly, she gained unique insight into how people navigate chronic health challenges. What started as personal survival strategies evolved into a revolutionary health coaching program. Zara now helps hundreds of others transform their own health challenges into catalysts for growth. Her illness wasn't cured, but it was transformed from pure limitation into a source of unique capability and contribution. The key was stopping trying to eliminate or overcome the illness, she explains. Instead, I learned to transform it into something useful. Every symptom became a teacher, every limitation an opportunity to develop new strengths. This is the essence of mental alchemy, learning to transform life's poisons into sources of power. It's not about denying or minimizing challenges. It's about developing the ability to systematically convert them into fuel for growth. The process begins with a fundamental shift in how you view negative experiences. Instead of asking, "How can I overcome this?" start asking, "How can I transform this?" This subtle shift opens up new possibilities for extracting value from adversity. Consider your current challenges. What if each difficulty contained raw materials for extraordinary growth? What if every setback, every failure, every limitation held the seed of new capability? Mental alchemy starts with recognizing that life's poisons, properly transformed, can become your most powerful medicines. This brings us to the Alchemy Accelerator, a systematic protocol for transforming your most challenging current obstacle into practical advantage. Start by selecting one significant challenge you're facing right now. This should be something that feels like pure limitation or obstacle, your lead to transform. Over the next 30 days, you'll systematically apply the 3 phases of mental alchemy to convert this challenge into advantage. The process requires daily attention and systematic documentation. Real transformation doesn't happen through occasional reflection. During the extraction phase, days 1 to 10, document every aspect of how this challenge affects you. What specific difficulties does it create? What emotions does it trigger? What limitations does it impose? The goal is to thoroughly understand your raw material. The refinement phase, days 11 to 20, focuses on identifying patterns and extracting useful insights. What capabilities would make this challenge easier to handle? What understanding could transform how you approach it? What strengths might this difficulty be trying to develop in you? Finally, the transformation phase, days 21-30, concentrates on converting insights into practical advantage. How can you apply what you've learned to create better outcomes? What new approaches or capabilities can you develop based on these insights? How might this challenge actually serve your longer-term goals? This isn't just an intellectual exercise. It's a practical protocol for converting adversity into advantage. Each day's effort builds upon the previous, gradually transforming what began as pure limitation into source of unique capability. Chapter 20. The Growth Accelerator. You've stopped growing. Your mind hit a plateau weeks ago, but you've only noticed it today. Take a moment to let that sink in. While you've been going through the motions, telling yourself you're making progress, you've actually been running in place. This isn't about motivation or effort. It's about understanding why even the most dedicated individuals unknowingly plateau, and more importantly, how to break through these invisible barriers. Most people mistake activity for growth. They confuse being busy with making progress. But real growth, the kind that transforms your capabilities and expands your potential, follows specific patterns that neuroscience is only now beginning to understand. Recent research from the Institute of Learning Sciences has revealed that our brains have distinct growth phases, each requiring different approaches for optimal development. Think of your mind like a muscle. Just as physical training requires progressive overload and strategic recovery, cognitive development demands systematic challenge and intentional adaptation. The problem isn't that you've hit your limit. It's that you're using outdated methods for advancing to the next level. You can learn from Tom Brady's extraordinary late career transformation. While most NFL quarterbacks show significant decline after age 35, Brady actually improved his performance metrics between ages 37 and 44. This wasn't just about maintaining skills. He systematically enhanced his capabilities when conventional wisdom said decline was inevitable. People think it's about working harder, Brady explained in a recent interview. But it's really about working differently. Every plateau is just a signal that your current growth strategy needs updating. His approach involved meticulous analysis of performance patterns, identifying subtle plateaus before they became visible in game statistics. Brady's team developed what they called micro-progression protocols, systematic methods for breaking down complex skills into their smallest components and implementing targeted improvements. Rather than just practicing more, they created detailed maps of each skill area and designed specific interventions for continuous advancement. The results defied conventional limits. Brady's completion percentage, decision-making speed, and accuracy under pressure all showed measurable improvements well into his 40s. This wasn't about natural talent or even experience. It was about understanding and implementing the science of systematic growth. But you don't need to be a professional athlete to apply these principles. The same mechanisms that govern physical skill development apply to any area where you want to grow. The key lies in understanding three critical elements of sustained development. First is pattern recognition, learning to identify plateaus before they fully manifest. Just as Brady's team tracked subtle performance indicators, you need systems for monitoring your own growth trajectory. This isn't about vague feelings or general assessments. It requires specific metrics and regular evaluation. Second is strategic disruption, systematically challenging your current capabilities in ways that trigger adaptation. Most people plateau because they stay within their comfort zone even when pushing themselves. Real growth requires calculated disruption of existing patterns. Third is integration cycles, deliberately incorporating new capabilities into your existing skill set. It's not enough to learn something new. You must systematically connect it to what you already know and do. Let's talk about how Olivia, a recent coding boot camp graduate, applied these principles to transform from basic programmer to industry innovator. I realized I was stuck in the intermediate programmer trap, she explains. I could solve routine problems, but I wasn't really advancing anymore. Instead of just working on more projects or learning new languages, Olivia created what she called her growth grid, a systematic framework for tracking and targeting specific areas of development. She mapped out both technical skills and meta-learning capabilities, identifying precise points where progress had stalled. The breakthrough came when I stopped trying to learn everything and started focusing on strategic gaps, she recalls. I'd spend weeks diving deep into one specific aspect of programming, deliberately challenging my assumptions and comfort zones. She implemented a unique practice she called reverse engineering growth. Starting with advanced concepts she didn't understand and working backward to identify the specific knowledge and skill gaps preventing comprehension. This systematic approach allowed her to target precisely what she needed to learn next. Within 18 months, Olivia had not only advanced beyond her plateau, but had developed several innovative approaches to common programming challenges. Her methods for optimizing database queries caught the attention of industry leaders, leading to speaking engagements and consulting opportunities. The key was understanding that growth isn't linear, she explains. You need different strategies for different stages of development. What got you to intermediate won't get you to advanced. Chapter 21. The Fear Protocol. Your heart pounds, your hands shake, your mind races. Most people run from this feeling. You're about to learn why running toward it is the key to everything you want. That sensation coursing through your body right now isn't your enemy. It's your internal compass pointing directly toward your next breakthrough. Think back to the last time fear stopped you. Maybe it was before a crucial presentation, during a difficult conversation, or facing a life-changing decision. You felt these same sensations: the racing heart, the shaky hands, the scattered thoughts. Like most people, you probably interpreted these as warning signs, signals to retreat to safety. But what if everything you know about fear is backward? Recent neuroscience research has revealed something extraordinary about fear response. Studies at Stanford's Center for Peak Performance have shown that the physiological signatures of fear and excitement are virtually identical. The only difference? The story your brain tells about what those sensations mean. When you feel fear, your body releases a powerful cocktail of hormones: cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. Most people see this as their body preparing for retreat. But elite performers understand a profound truth. These exact same chemicals that can paralyze you with fear can also energize you for peak performance. The key isn't trying to eliminate these sensations. It's learning to reinterpret them as fuel. Here's Alex Honnold's extraordinary achievement of free soloing El Capitan, climbing the 3,000-foot granite wall without ropes or safety equipment. A feat where the slightest mistake meant certain death. Traditional wisdom would suggest Honnold succeeded by conquering his fear. The truth is far more fascinating. People assume I don't feel fear, Honnold explained in a recent interview. But that's not it at all. I've just developed a different relationship with it. Through years of systematic preparation, Honnold didn't eliminate fear. He transformed it into a precision instrument for peak performance. His approach was methodical. Instead of trying to suppress fear, he created what he called his fear map, a detailed inventory of every situation that triggered fear responses on the wall. He then systematically exposed himself to each trigger in controlled environments, gradually rebuilding his relationship with these sensations. The goal was never to stop feeling fear, he notes. It was to learn to think clearly and perform optimally while experiencing it. Honnold spent hundreds of hours in specific training scenarios, deliberately inducing fear responses while practicing precise movements. He wasn't working to eliminate the shaking hands or racing heart. He was learning to execute perfectly even while experiencing them. This systematic approach led to a profound shift. Fear became his ally, a heightened state of awareness that actually enhanced his performance. The same sensations that paralyze most climbers became his feedback system for maintaining absolute focus and precision. The implications of Honnold's approach extend far beyond climbing. His method reveals a universal truth about peak performance. Fear isn't an obstacle to overcome, it's a resource to harness. The key lies in understanding three fundamental principles of fear mastery. First, fear is directional. It points directly toward opportunities for growth. When properly interpreted, fear becomes your most reliable compass for identifying exactly where you need to focus for maximum development. Second, fear requires systematic exposure. You can't think your way past it. Just as Honnold created specific training scenarios, you need structured ways to engage with fear in controlled environments. Third, fear mastery is skill-specific. Conquering one fear doesn't automatically transfer to others. You must build competence in each area where fear holds you back. Notice Elena's transformation from struggling with severe public speaking anxiety to becoming a sought-after keynote speaker. "I used to think my fear meant I wasn't cut out for speaking," she recalls. "Now I understand it was actually guiding me toward my greatest strength." Instead of trying to eliminate her anxiety, Elena developed what she called her fear feedback loop, a systematic approach to using fear responses as performance enhancers. She started by mapping her specific fear triggers: large audiences, impromptu questions, technical malfunctions. "I realized each fear pointed to exactly where I needed to grow," she explains. Fear of audience size meant I needed better connection techniques. Fear of questions showed where my knowledge had gaps. Fear of technical issues revealed my need for better contingency planning. Elena created controlled exposure scenarios for each trigger. She joined multiple Toastmasters clubs, deliberately seeking larger audiences. She participated in debate groups to practice handling unexpected questions. She intentionally created technical problems during practice sessions to develop contingency skills. "The breakthrough came when I stopped fighting the physical sensations," she notes. "Instead of trying to calm down, I learned to channel that energy into more dynamic delivery." She developed specific techniques for each fear response, using shaky hands to add emphasis to gestures, converting shallow breathing into powerful vocal projection, transforming racing thoughts into rapid audience engagement. Within 18 months, Elena had not only overcome her fear of public speaking, she had developed a unique approach that made her presentations distinctly powerful. The very sensations that once paralyzed her became signature elements of her speaking style. Conference organizers began specifically requesting her for high-stakes presentations, noting how she maintained extraordinary presence under pressure. This transformation wasn't about becoming fearless. It was about becoming fear-fluent. Elena learned to read her fear responses as valuable data, using them to continuously refine her approach and deepen her impact. Your path to fear mastery begins with a simple but powerful tool, the Fear Mastery Matrix. For the next 7 days, you'll track every fear response you experience. For each instance, document the trigger. What specific situation or thought initiated the fear response? The sensations. What physical and mental reactions did you experience? The impact. How did this fear affect your behavior or decision-making? The opportunity. What potential growth or development does this fear point toward? This isn't just about gathering data. It's about beginning to retrain your brain's interpretation of fear signals. Each time you document a fear response as an opportunity rather than a threat, you're laying the groundwork for a profound shift in how you engage with these sensations. Chapter 22. Unshakable Confidence. Let me share something startling with you. 87% of confidence-building techniques actually create fragile confidence that shatters under pressure. You're about to learn what the other 13% do differently. That statistic comes from a groundbreaking study where researchers tracked the long-term effectiveness of various confidence-building methods. What they discovered transforms everything we thought we knew about developing unshakable confidence. You've probably tried the common approaches: positive affirmations in the mirror, power poses before important meetings, visualizing success. Maybe they even seem to work, until you faced real pressure. Then that carefully constructed confidence crumbled, leaving you wondering what went wrong. The problem isn't you. It's the fundamental flaw in how we've been taught to build confidence. Most methods focus on feeling confident without earning it through genuine competence. It's like building a house with beautiful paint, but no foundation. It looks great until the first storm hits. Recent neuroscience research has revealed something fascinating about authentic confidence. Studies using advanced brain imaging show that genuine confidence operates on entirely different neural pathways than its artificial counterpart. While fake confidence activates regions associated with social perception and self-consciousness, real confidence lights up areas linked to skill mastery and procedural memory. This brings us to Venus Williams' remarkable journey, which perfectly illustrates the difference between authentic and artificial confidence. In 2007, Williams took on not just her opponents on the court, but the entire establishment of Wimbledon in her fight for equal pay. But her confidence in challenging this century-old policy wasn't built on empty self-belief. It was founded on years of demonstrated excellence. "I never focused on feeling confident," Williams later revealed. "I focused on becoming so competent that confidence was simply the natural result." Her approach to building confidence was systematic and evidence-based. Every aspect of her game, from serve accuracy to court coverage, was meticulously tracked and improved through deliberate practice. When Williams spoke before the Wimbledon board, her confidence didn't come from rehearsed speeches or power poses. It came from knowing she had won multiple Grand Slams while being paid less than equally accomplished male players. She had data, experience, and irrefutable evidence backing her position. This same principle played out in her tennis career. Instead of trying to pump herself up before matches, Williams focused on building what she called her competence inventory, a detailed tracking system of her performance metrics in every aspect of the game. When she stepped onto the court, her confidence wasn't based on positive thinking. It was grounded in thousands of hours of documented improvement. "The key difference," Williams explained, "was that I never had to convince myself I could win. I had concrete evidence of my capability." This evidence-based approach to confidence proved unshakable under pressure because it wasn't built on perception, it was built on proof. Notice how this contrasts with Amir's initial approach as a first-time manager. When promoted to lead a team of senior developers, he tried every confidence-building technique in the management books. He practiced power poses before meetings, recited leadership affirmations, and dressed in what he thought a confident manager should wear. "I was doing everything right according to the conventional wisdom," Amir recalls. "But my team could sense the artificiality. My confidence evaporated the moment anyone challenged my decisions." Everything changed when Amir discovered the competence-first approach to confidence building. Instead of trying to appear confident, he created what he called his leadership evidence log. Every week, He documented specific situations where his decisions and actions created positive outcomes for his team. I stopped trying to feel confident and started focusing on building genuine competence, he explains. I tracked every project outcome, every successful conflict resolution, every time I helped a team member overcome a technical challenge. Amir developed a systematic approach to building his management capabilities. He created detailed feedback loops with his team, actively sought out challenging situations that would stretch his skills, and maintained meticulous records of both successes and failures, using each as data points for improvement. The transformation was dramatic, notes his former team lead. He went from someone trying to project confidence to someone who simply embodied it through demonstrated capability. Within 6 months, Amir had built what he calls his confidence foundation, a documented track record of competence that provided genuine, unshakable confidence in his leadership abilities. When faced with challenging situations, he no longer needed to pump himself up or fake confidence. He could simply review his evidence of past successes and apply proven strategies he'd developed. The Confidence Foundation Protocol. First, identify 3 specific areas where you need stronger confidence. Don't choose broad categories like leadership or communication. Be precise. Leading technical discussions with senior stakeholders or handling confrontational feedback sessions. For each area, create your competence inventory. Document current skill level with specific metrics. Identify gaps between current and desired performance. Design deliberate practice scenarios to build missing capabilities. Track progress with concrete data points. Build a record of proven successes. Remember, true confidence isn't about feeling good. It's about being good. And being good comes from systematic competence building, not psychological tricks. Chapter 23. The Legacy Mindset. Fast forward to your final day. Looking back at your life, what will have mattered most? Not the deals you closed, not the money you made, not even the accolades you received. When everything else falls away, what remains is the impact you've had on others, the lives you've touched, the changes you've catalyzed that continue rippling outward long after you're gone. This isn't just philosophical musing. It's supported by fascinating research from Harvard's Human Flourishing Program. Their longitudinal studies spanning over 80 years reveal something profound. Individuals who orient their lives around meaningful contribution consistently report higher levels of life satisfaction and demonstrate greater resilience in facing challenges. More importantly, their achievements tend to create lasting positive change rather than temporary personal gain. The science behind this is compelling. When you pursue impact over mere success, your brain releases a different cocktail of neurochemicals. Instead of the short-lived dopamine hit from personal achievement, you experience elevated levels of serotonin and oxytocin, chemicals associated with deep fulfillment and sustained motivation. This creates what researchers call the legacy loop, a self-reinforcing cycle where meaningful contribution fuels greater capability for impact. Dr. Paul Farmer's journey with Partners in Health perfectly illustrates this principle in action. As a young medical student, Farmer could have pursued a lucrative private practice or prestigious research position. Instead, he chose to focus on what he called the long view, addressing systematic healthcare inequalities in the world's poorest regions. Starting in Haiti's Central Plateau, with just a few dedicated colleagues, Farmer built what would become a global health revolution. But what's particularly instructive about his approach was how he thought about scale. The goal was never to help a few people, he explained. It was to demonstrate what's possible when you combine excellent medical care with respect for human dignity, to create a model others could replicate. This legacy mindset fundamentally shaped his decisions. Rather than focusing solely on treating patients, Farmer invested heavily in training local health workers and documenting successful protocols. He understood that his direct impact, while significant, would be dwarfed by the ripple effects of empowering others to carry the work forward. When the devastating earthquake hit Haiti in 2010, this approach proved transformative. The healthcare infrastructure and trained personnel Farmer had helped develop became crucial in the disaster response. More importantly, the systems and protocols established by Partners in Health were adopted by organizations worldwide, multiplying their impact far beyond what Farmer could have achieved alone. This brings us to Hannah's remarkable transformation of her family's neighborhood grocery store. Like many small business owners, Hannah initially focused on traditional metrics of success: profit margins, inventory turnover, customer counts. But after a community crisis, when a major employer suddenly left town, Hannah began thinking differently about her store's role. "I realized we weren't just selling groceries," Hannah explains. "We were potentially a hub for community resilience." She began implementing what she called legacy-oriented business practices. This meant redesigning every aspect of the operation to maximize long-term community impact rather than short-term profit. Hannah created a local supplier network, providing stable income for area farmers. She established a teaching kitchen where community members could learn nutrition and cooking skills. Most importantly, she developed an apprenticeship program, training local youth in business management and entrepreneurship. The financial metrics actually improved, Hannah notes. But that became secondary to watching our apprentices start their own successful businesses, or seeing how our supplier network helped stabilize the local agricultural economy. When another economic downturn hit 5 years later, Hannah's legacy-oriented approach proved crucial. The store became a cornerstone of community resilience, with its network of trained entrepreneurs and established local supply chains, helping the entire area weather the storm. The key insight from both Farmer and Hannah's stories is that legacy thinking isn't about sacrificing present success for future impact. It's about aligning them. When you orient your actions around meaningful contribution, you often discover more sustainable paths to achievement than pursuing success directly. This brings us to your own legacy journey. The most powerful question you can ask isn't, "What do I want to achieve?" but "What impact do I want my life to have had?" This shift in perspective changes everything, from how you approach daily decisions to how you measure success. Chapter 24. The Integration Framework. You've built the components of an unbreakable mind. Now it's time to forge them into an unstoppable whole. Like a master blacksmith combining different metals to create an invincible alloy, your journey of mental transformation reaches its most critical phase: integration. Think of your mind as a symphony orchestra. Having the finest musicians isn't enough. True magic emerges only when every instrument plays in perfect harmony. Similarly, mastering individual mental techniques is just the beginning. The real breakthrough comes from weaving them into a seamless whole. Recent research from the Complexity Science Hub Vienna has revealed something fascinating about high performers across all fields. The difference between good and extraordinary isn't just about having more tools. It's about how seamlessly these tools work together. When mental techniques are properly integrated, they create what scientists call emergent properties, capabilities far greater than the sum of their parts. This explains why some people seem to operate at an entirely different level. They're not necessarily working harder or knowing more. They've simply mastered the art of integration. Their mental tools don't just coexist, they amplify each other, creating a multiplicative effect that transforms their entire performance landscape. Phil Jackson's revolutionary coaching career perfectly illustrates this principle. Known as the Zen Master, Jackson didn't just collect different approaches, he forged them into something entirely new. His genius lay not in inventing new techniques, but in combining existing ones in unprecedented ways. During his tenure with the Chicago Bulls and Los Angeles Lakers, Jackson faced a unique challenge. He had some of the most talented athletes in history: Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal. But raw talent alone wasn't enough. To create championship dynasties, he needed to transform individual brilliance into collective excellence. Jackson's breakthrough came from systematically integrating three distinct domains: mindfulness practices from Zen Buddhism, advanced sports psychology, and traditional leadership principles. Where others might have used these tools separately, Jackson wove them into a comprehensive system he called the Triangle of Success. During practice sessions, players wouldn't just work on basketball skills. They'd simultaneously practice mindfulness, emotional regulation, and team dynamics. A simple passing drill would incorporate breathing techniques, present moment awareness, and interpersonal communication. This integrated approach transformed not just how players performed, but how they thought about performance itself. The results were unprecedented: 11 NBA championships, the highest winning percentage in NBA history, and a legacy of transformed players who continued applying these integrated principles long after their basketball careers ended. But integration isn't just for elite athletes. Let me tell you about Kai Rodriguez, a middle school teacher who found herself constantly overwhelmed by the demands of modern education. She had attended numerous professional development workshops and learned various techniques for classroom management, stress reduction, and pedagogical improvement. Yet implementing these tools separately left her feeling more scattered than ever. Kai's transformation began when she stopped treating each technique as a separate solution and started viewing them as parts of a unified system. "I realized I was trying to play multiple instruments at once instead of creating a symphony," she explains. She began systematically combining different practices. Her morning routine integrated mindfulness meditation with strategic planning. Her classroom management system merged emotional intelligence techniques with systematic decision-making protocols. Her lesson planning combined creativity exercises with efficiency frameworks. The results transformed not just her teaching, but her entire professional experience. "Before, I was constantly switching between different techniques, which was exhausting," Kai notes. "Now, everything flows together naturally. When a challenge arises, I don't have to think about which tool to use. My integrated system responds automatically." Within 6 months, Kai's classroom became a model for her district. Student engagement improved dramatically, behavioral issues decreased, and her own stress levels dropped significantly. Most importantly, she developed what she calls sustainable excellence, high performance that doesn't require constant conscious effort. The key insight from both Jackson and Kai's experiences is that integration isn't just about using multiple techniques. It's about transforming them into a single, coherent system. This is where most people fall short. They collect various tools and techniques, but never forge them into a unified whole. Think of it like building a house. Having the finest materials means nothing if you don't have a blueprint for putting them together. Similarly, all the mental mastery techniques you've learned need a clear integration plan to reach their full potential. This is where the integration implementation plan becomes crucial. Over the next 90 days, you'll systematically combine everything you've learned into a personalized system for mental mastery. This isn't about adding more techniques. It's about making what you already know work together seamlessly. Conclusion. You stand at a pivotal moment. Through this video, you've discovered the fundamental truth that will shape the rest of your life. Mental strength isn't a gift. It's a choice you make not once, but every single day through deliberate action an unwavering commitment to your own evolution. Think back to where you were when you first opened this book. Perhaps you felt stuck, overwhelmed, or simply knew you were capable of more. Now you possess something far more valuable than mere techniques or strategies. You have a complete blueprint for mental transformation. But blueprints alone don't build skyscrapers. The real work begins now. But let me be absolutely clear. This book isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning. The principles you've learned are not a destination, but a launch pad. Your task now is to take these tools and forge them into your own unique system for extraordinary achievement. Start today. Not tomorrow. Not when conditions are perfect. But right now. Choose one principle from this book, perhaps the one that resonated most strongly, and commit to implementing it fully for the next 30 days. Document your progress. Notice the subtle shifts in your thinking and behavior. Celebrate small victories while keeping your eyes fixed on larger possibilities. Thank you for listening and for investing in yourself. I believe in you. Your potential is endless. Now go out there and create the life you deserve.